Comenzamos.
Muy buenos días, secretario ejecutivo. Entonces, partimos, ¿no?
Sí,
Muy bien. Muy buenos días, buenas tardes para los que se conectan desde Europa. Good morning, good afternoon to those who are connecting from Europe. Parto por informarles que contamos con interpretación español-inglés. Esa pueden acceder en el tercer icono de la esquina inferior izquierda, que es un globito. Ustedes pinchan ahí y pueden acceder a la interpretación. I begin by telling everybody that we have simultaneous interpretation from Spanish English, and you could access to the interpretation in the third icon in the lower left corner of your screen. There is a little glove. Bueno, en CEPAL nos da mucho gusto ser
At UCLAC,
anfitriones
we are
virtuales
pleased to
de este
be
Blue
virtual
Talk
hosts of this Blue
Regional
Talk,
América Latina y el
regional,
Caribe. Camino a
regional
la
for
tercera
America and the
conferencia
Caribbean,
de las
on the
Naciones
road to
Unidas
the third
sobre el
Conference of the United
Océano
Nations
2025.
on the Ocean 2025.
Hemos coorganizado
We
este
have
diálogo
co-organized
que sin duda
this
generará importantes
discussion
insumos
that
para
will
la Europe
create significant
Press
input
con las
for
embajadas de
Europe
Chile
3 with the embassies of
y
Chile,
Costa Rica,
Costa
perdón,
Rica,
con las embajadas
correct
de
himself, with the
Francia
embassies of
y Costa
France
Rica y Chile,
and Costa Rica and Chile,
ambos países
both
copresidentes
countries
de la conferencia.
co-chairs of this
Ahora
conference.
tendremos las palabras del
Now
señor José
we'll
Manuel
listen
Salazar
to Mr.
Chirinax,
José Manuel
secretario
Salazar
ejecutivo de la
Chirinax,
CEPAL.
Executive Secretary of ICLAC.
muchas gracias, Gerardo. Muy buenos días a
Gerardo, good
todas y
morning.
todos.
Good morning,
Es
everyone.
un gran honor
It is
darles la bienvenida a
an
este
honor
Blue
to
Talk regional,
welcome you to this
un
regional
paso
Blue
decisivo
Talk,
en nuestro
a
camino hacia la
decisive
tercera
step on our
conferencia
way to
de
the
Naciones
third
Unidas sobre el
Conference of the
Océano.
United Nations on the
Este
Ocean.
evento, organizado
This
por la CEPAL en
event that
conjunto
is
con las
co-organized by
embajadas
ICLAC
de
together
Costa
with the
Rica y
embassies of
Francia en Chile,
France and Chile
representa una oportunidad única
represent
para
a
fortalecer nuestra
unique
colaboración
opportunity,
y nuestro
our
compromiso
collaboration
de
and
protección del
our
océano.
commitment
Me
to
complace
protect the
saludar y
oceans.
agradecer
I'm
especialmente a la
pleased
señora
to
Gina
greet and
Guillén Grillo,
thank
directora
Mrs. Gina
general
Guillén
de
Grillo,
Política
General
Exterior
Director
y
of
enviada
Foreign Policy and
presidencial para el Océano de Costa
Presidential
Rica,
Envoy
y a la señora Adriana
from
Murillo,
Costa Rica, and Diana
embajadora
Murillo,
de Costa Rica en Chile.
Ambassador of Costa Rica in
Extiendo
Chile.
también un cordial
I'd like
saludo a
to
las
extend
autoridades
also
nacionales y
warm greetings to
subnacionales,
national and
representantes de
subnational
organizaciones
authorities,
internacionales, sociedad
representatives of
civil
international
y comunidad
organizations, civil
científica
society,
que
and
hoy
scientific
nos acompañan.
community that are here with us today.
Estimadas y estimados colegas,
Dear colleagues,
es un lugar común
it is
imaginar a nuestra región como
common
una
to
franja de
imagine
tierra,
our
pero en
region as
realidad
a
América Latina y el Caribe tiene
strip of
igual
land, but
sentido,
Latin America and the
quizás
Caribbean
incluso más sentido,
makes sense and even
desde el
makes more
agua,
sense.
desde los dos
From
océanos que
the
nos
water,
unen
from the
y
two
que
oceans that
albergan
connect
una
us, that
biodiversidad
hold
marina
uh,
excepcional.
an exceptional
Nuestra región
marine
cuenta con
biodiversity. Our region,
47 de las
47 of the
258 ecorregiones
258
marinas del mundo.
marine ecoregions
La
of
gran
the world.
mayoría de nuestros países,
The
23
majority
de
of
ellos, de
our
hecho, tienen más
countries,
territorio
23 of
marino
them, in fact,
que
have
terrestre.
more marine territory than
En
terrestrial
promedio, el
territory. On
50% del
average,
territorio de los países de
50%
la
of
región
the land of the
corresponde al
countries in the
océano.
region accounts for
En el Caribe
ocean.
insular, esta
In
proporción
the
alcanza el
insular
91%
Caribbean,
y se
this
aproxima al
proportion
99%
is
en
close
algunos
to
estados,
99% in
como Barbados y Antigua y
Barbados
Barbuda.
and Antigua and Barbuda.
Esta configuración geográfica no solo
This
posiciona a nuestra
geographic
región
configuration
como
not
un
only
actor
positions our region
estratégico en la agenda de
strategic
vida submarina,
partner in
sino
the
que plantea
submarine
una
life
oportunidad
agenda, but
histórica
also
para
states a
construir
historical
una
opportunity to
economía
build
marina
uh,
sostenible,
a
justa e
sustainable,
inclusiva.
fair, and inclusive
La
marine
economía oceánica es
economy.
sumamente diversa y cada vez
Ocean
más
economy
relevante
is
para el desarrollo
diverse
económico y
and more
social de
relevant
América
for
Latina y el
economic and
Caribe.
social development of Latin
Actividades
America and the
como la
Caribbean.
pesca, la
Activities such
acuicultura
as
y el transporte marítimo y
fishing,
el
fish
turismo
farming, maritime
contribuyen
transport, and tourism
significativamente
contribute
a los ingresos de
significantly
la población
to
y al
the
empleo en nuestra
population and
región.
to create
Sin
jobs in our
embargo,
region.
esta relevancia
However,
aún no se refleja
this
en una
relevance
inversión
is not yet
suficiente
reflected
en
in a
ciencia, tecnología
sufficient
e
investment on
innovación
science, technology,
marino-costera.
and innovation related to
Además,
coastal
nuestros
areas and the
ecosistemas marinos
maritime
enfrentan
ecosystem.
presiones
Our
cada vez
marine
mayores,
ecosystems are facing
como la
more
sobrepesca,
bigger
la
pressures such
contaminación
as
por plásticos y
overfishing,
nutrientes,
plastic
la
and
pérdida
nutrient
de
contamination,
biodiversidad
the loss
y
of
los impactos del
biodiversity,
cambio
and
climático,
the impacts
como
of
la
climate change,
acidificación
such as
y el aumento del
acidification
nivel del
and
mar.
the rising of the sea level. All of this without considering the risks associated to the potential development of underwater mining, whose expansion poses significant questions about the habitat integrity, habitats that have not yet been researched enough, and global rules for its governance. These threats, as we know, are disproportionately impacting the Caribbean small island states and those nations that rely on marine resources. The third conference of United Nations on the Ocean that will take place in Nice in June accounts for a key opportunity to make progress in concrete commitments and to reinforce Latin America, the role of Latin America and the Caribbean in the global ocean agenda. ICLAC, together with French cooperation, has elaborated a study entitled Overview of the Oceans, Seas and Marine Resources in Sustainable Development for Latin America and the Caribbean that offers an updated vision of the main challenges and opportunities of the region regarding fulfilling SDG number 14 that uses oceans sustainably and also marine resources for sustainable development. The objective of this publication is to build evidence and public policy recommendations that will drive a sustainable economy that will contribute to the fulfillment of the 2030 agenda. The study will be introduced next month during the third conference of the ocean, although we will take a look at some of its findings during this work today. As you'll see in that document, we are convinced that Latin America and the Caribbean can and should become a benchmark in terms of transformative ocean governance. In order to achieve that, among other things, we needed to reduce the subsidies that drive overexploitation of marine resources and to sustainable incentives. We must also facilitate access to financing for marine conservation and to promote innovative tools such as blue bonds. Likewise, it is absolutely necessary to foster technology cooperation, and that framework to ensure the engagement of the indigenous peoples and women who must be main role players in all these changes. These challenges cannot be faced in isolation. The ocean is an indivisible system. Decisions made in one part of the world have immediate impacts on other parts of the world. That's why it's so key for America and the Caribbean to act as a single voice in multilateral contexts, recognizing their responsibility, but also demanding the co-responsibility of the international community. Facing such a challenge, this event becomes a valuable opportunity to make progress towards the third conference of the United Nations on the ocean with a common agenda and with shared solutions. We'd like to thank the leadership and support of the governments of France and Costa Rica to conduct this discussion that we are convinced will build to amplify the voice of Latin America and the Caribbean in the world ocean agenda. Thank you very much.
Secretario Ejecutivo. Ahora tiene la palabra la embajadora Gina Guillén-Grillo, Directora General de Política Exterior.
Thank you, Executive Secretary. We now offer the floor to Dina Grillo, and
Muchísimas
she
gracias. Buenos
is the
días
Director
y buenas
General of Foreign
tardes
Policies
todos.
of Costa Rica.
Señor Secretario
Good
General,
afternoon,
estimado don
Your
José
Excellency,
Manuel
Executive Secretary
Salazar,
José
querido
Manuel Salazar,
excelentísimos señores embajadores, representantes permanentes y delegaciones de América
ambassadors,
Latina y el
permanent representatives, representatives of Latin America and the Caribbean.
abrazo
Warm
azul
greeting,
a todos
a
esos
blue
colegas que nos
greeting
acompañan,
to all
que son
our
también
colleagues
trabajadores
joining us
por
today
el
who
océano.
are also working
Agradecemos
in
profundamente
favor
a
of
la
the ocean.
CEPAL por este
We would like to
espacio
thank
de
ECLAC for
articulación
this
regional y de
space for
preparación
regional
conjunta a la
articulation and
tercera
joint
conferencia
preparation
del
for
océano
this
UNEP
third
3 que va a ser
conference
en Francia en menos de un mes.
on the ocean
Y es muy
that will
importante
take place in
hablemos del
France in
océano
under
y
a
me
month.
ha
It's important for us to
dado
talk
una gran
about the
alegría
ocean, and
escuchar al
I
señor
am very
secretario
pleased to
hablar
hear
de océano
the
en
Executive
singular, porque
Secretary talking about the ocean in
hace muchas
singular.
lunas estudiábamos nosotros,
Many
nos
moons
hablaban de
ago, we
muchos
studied
océanos.
and we
Y
were
efectivamente hay muchas
we were
cuencas
taught
oceánicas.
about
Pero desde el
many
punto de
oceans.
vista ambiental
But from
es
the
un solo
environmental
océano que cubre
perspective, it is
71%
one
de la
ocean
superficie
that
de la
covers
Tierra
71%
y
of
que
the,
tiene sus
of
aguas
the
y su
earth,
biodiversidad
and it
completamente
has its
interconectadas y por eso
water
es tan
and
importante
biodiversity fully
y que
interconnected. That's
Costa
why
Rica
it's
lo
important
promueve constantemente, que desde el punto de vista
to
ambiental
be promoted
tengamos
as
certeza y
such.
hablemos de un océano, donde además está el 99%, el 95% de la biosfera, que es el
95% of
espacio
the
habitable
biosphere is
del planeta.
habitable.
Este océano que produce la mitad del
This
oxígeno, o sea,
ocean
de
produces
cada
half
dos
of the
respiraciones, una no
oxygen.
la podríamos
Every
dar si no
breath,
tuviéramos
or every
un
2 breaths, we
océano
could not take
saludable. Y
one
además es el
if
mayor
we
sumidero
weren't
de
in a
carbono y regulador
healthy
del
environment.
clima.
There's also
Y
carbon that
como
regulates
seguro ya lo han
climate, and of
escuchado,
course,
3
as
mil
you
millones de
may have
personas en el
heard,
mundo
3
dependen de su
billion people in the
biodiversidad para el
world
sustento,
depend
porque
on this
suministra 200
biodiversity
millones
for
de
their
toneladas de
livelihood.
peces y mariscos al año, alimentando al 20% de la
And of
población
course, to
mundial y
feed
empleando
20% of the
60
population
millones
and
de personas en
using
todo el mundo.
70 million
Por eso es que Naciones Unidas decidió,
being employed.
eh,
And that is
a
why
través
we
de
decided
una idea
through
del representante
an idea
especial del
of
secretario
the
general de
special
la ONU
representative
para el
for the
océano, el embajador
UN
Peter Thompson,
Secretary for
establecer
Oceans, Ambassador Peter
estas
Thompson, establishing
conferencias oceánicas cada 3
these
años para
conferences
promover la
every 3 years in
implementación
order to
del,
promote the implementation of
del Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible 14, que es el de
SDG 14,
uso sostenible y conservación
which is
del
sustainable
océano, que es el
use
que
and
menos
conservation of the
ha
ocean, which
recibido
is the one that
financiamiento.
has received
Y
the
por
least
eso es que está
financing.
esta conferencia Francia y Costa Rica,
That is why
y un saludo muy grande a los representantes de
for
Francia
this
que nos
conference,
acompañan,
France and Costa Rica have
tiene como tema acelerar la acción y movilizar a todos
decided
los
to
actores para la
take
conservación
action and mobilize
y el
all
uso sostenible del
stakeholders for
océano.
conservation and
Nos
sustainable
parece que
use
este es
of
un
the ocean.
momento además
We believe
idóneo,
that
como
it
indicó el señor
is the right
secretario,
time,
para la
the
región,
adequate
para que
time
nos
to do
movilicemos y
so for the
abordemos los
region.
retos a
As the
los que nos
Executive Secretary
enfrentamos
said,
al
we need to
preservar y utilizar
mobilize
el océano de una
and
manera que sea
present the ocean
sustentable.
and
Nos
take
parece
care of
muy
it in a way that
importante
is
reiterar
sustainable. It's important
eh,
to
que es un espacio verdaderamente
stress
relevante
that
para
it
el
is a
mundo y
truly
uno
relevant
que
space
tenemos
for the
confirmada la
ocean.
participación de casi todos los
We've
países.
confirmed the
Pero para
participation
nuestra
of almost
región es
all
muy
countries,
importante
but
que encontremos
it
soluciones
is
a las
important
crisis que
for a
enfrenta el
region that we
océano
find
a través
solutions
de
for these
estrategias
crises
que
through
aceleren el cumplimiento del
strategies that
ODS
can
14.
accelerate
Por eso
compliance of SDG
impulsamos
14
en la región
and
varios países
thus
esta agenda azul. Todavía persiste una gran
take
desconexión entre el nivel de
push
amenaza
this
del
blue
océano
agenda.
y el nivel de
We know
inversión
that the
que hay
ocean
para esto.
undergoes several
Y
threats
esa
and
desconexión
there
es
is
uno de los
insufficient funding
primeros retos
to protect
que
it. That is one of
tenemos
our
que
main
abordar.
challenges.
Los grandes esfuerzos de acción climática,
Climate
biodiversidad, gobernanza
change,
oceánica y
biodiversity,
financiamiento,
ocean
así como las
governance,
diferentes
funding,
normas
as well as
jurídicas y los
the
procesos de
different legal
negociación
frameworks and the
deben
negotiation
también de
processes
avanzar
must
de manera
also
articulada, porque
advance in
nosotros
an
nos reunimos
articulated
para ver
fashion,
temas de cambio
because
climático,
we
nos reunimos
normally
para
meet
ver
to talk
temas de
about climate
biodiversidad y
change
todo lo
or
hacemos en
biodiversity
silos.
or
Y sé que esto
other
ahora es
aspects,
como
but
algo que se habla mucho, pero todavía no estamos haciendo nada
we
concreto para dejar de trabajar en silos.
must
Y eso es algo que
work
estamos tratando de hacer a
specifically,
través de la conferencia del océano.
we must stop working
En
in
vez de duplicar
silos.
esfuerzos y
Instead of
desperdiciar recursos,
duplicating efforts and
lograr
wasting
articular
resources, we
todo
need
de
to
mejor manera.
articulate
Debemos también
in a better and more
reconocer el
efficient
rápido
way.
deterioro de la salud del océano, cómo esto altera los ecosistemas
This
y
alters
por eso
ecosystems,
la
it affects the
conferencia
oceans. That
nos da
is
esta
why the
oportunidad de reafirmar que
ocean,
nuestra
the
región tiene
conference
una
gives
voz
us this
fuerte y
opportunity.
distintiva en la agenda
It offers the
oceánica
region a
global. Y
distinctive
lo hemos
and
venido
strong voice in
haciendo
this
cada vez
global
con
agenda.
más
We are
presencia.
working
En
on
el
it.
2024, Colombia fue anfitrión de la conferencia de las partes de la Convención sobre la Biodiversidad Biológica, una excelente conferencia que tuvo muy buenos
attended an
resultados
excellent conference that
prácticos,
had
que es muy
very
importante. Y
positive
tendremos a
and
Brasil
practical results.
este
That was
año
extremely
albergando la
important.
COP30
That is
de
why
cambio
Brazil
climático.
is hosting COP30
Chile
on
se ha
climate
ofrecido
change.
como
Chile has
sede de la
offered
Secretaría del
to be
Tratado
the
de
Secretariat
Altamar, el
of
Tratado
the High
BBNJ,
Seas
y
Treaty,
además va a
BBNJ,
coorganizar
and has
la cuarta conferencia
co-organized
del
or will
Océano,
organize the fourth
y
conference on the
Costa Rica, que
ocean.
tiene el gran
And
honor
Costa
de
Rica
ser
has the
este año
honor
coanfitrión de la
to
tercera
be the
conferencia del
co-host
Océano.
this
Por
year.
eso celebramos el
And
creciente
we celebrate
involucramiento de los
the
países de la
growing
región
involvement of the
en
countries
diferentes cosas. Varios
of the
han
region.
ratificado ya el
Several
Tratado de
have
Altamar
already
y
ratified
bueno,
the
instamos
ITS
a que
treaty,
más lo
and we would
sigan
like
haciendo
to
y también
invite
en una amenaza nueva que está
more
viviendo
to
nuestro
do
océano,
so. And
que es
in view of this new threat
el
that
posible
our
inicio
ocean is
de la minería de fondos marinos,
experiencing,
algo
which
que
is the
todos los científicos han dicho que
possible beginning
destruirá no solo
of
los fondos marinos, sino también
mining of the seabed
las
that
columnas de
will
agua y la superficie
destroy
del
the
océano
water
y
columns, the
posiblemente
surface of the
perdamos
ocean, and
para siempre el
we will
equilibrio
perhaps
del
lose this
planeta si no
the
nos esperamos
balance
para
of the
ver si
planet
se puede hacer o
forever.
no
So
basados en la
instead of
ciencia.
waiting until it
En
can be
este
done or not
movimiento
based on science,
de
this
tener
movement
la minería submarina a través de una prórroga
for
precautoria ha
underwater
sido
mining
también
and
nuestra
stopping it
región
has, as a precautionary measure, it
más
has
fuerte
been
y que ha
one of
logrado
the
que más
strongest
países se vayan
moves, and
sumando.
it
Así
has
que los que todavía no
gained
se han
traction.
sumado a esto, les invitamos
So countries that have
ratificar
not yet
BBNJ,
ratified
ratificar
BBNJ, we would like
el
to
acuerdo
invite you
de
to
la
do so. Ratify the
de la Organización del Comercio contra
agreement of the
subsidios
trade agreement against
y
subsidies
también
and
trabajar en la Autoridad de
work
Fondos Marinos para
on
que
the
no empiece la minería de
authority
fondos
of
marinos hasta que no
ocean
sepamos,
seabeds in
basados
order
en la
to
ciencia,
prevent
cuáles serían
mining.
las
Let's not
consecuencias.
just wait
Junto
to
con
see what the
Francia, hemos
consequences will
definido
be
tres
only
prioridades para
based
la
on science.
conferencia del
Together with
océano.
France, we have
Primero, lo
been
que les hablaba, concluir procesos multilaterales
trying to
claves,
conclude
como el
key
Tratado contra
multilateral
la
processes,
contaminación por
such as a treaty
plásticos
against
y alcanzar las 60
pollution with
ratificaciones para la
plastic,
entrada en vigor
and
del Acuerdo
reaching
de
the
Altamar.
ratification with the High Seas
El segundo
Agreement.
punto
And
es
the
movilizar
second
recursos y
point
alianzas
is
para la
mobilizing
economía
resources
azul
and partnerships
sostenible.
for the sustainable blue
Necesitamos
economy.
tener suficientes
We need to
recursos
have
para que los
sufficient
compromisos
resources
ambiciosos
so
de
that
los
these
países, sobre
ambitious
todo los
commitments
países en desarrollo, puedan
of
cumplirse.
the developing countries
Y el otro
can
punto,
be met.
que lo digo de
And
tercero,
another
pero en
point,
realidad está
and
en la
I
base de
am
todo,
mentioning it
es
third, but it is at the
fortalecer
core of
la
everything, is to
ciencia
strengthen
para la toma
everything,
de decisiones de política
the
pública. Hasta
strengthening
ahora tenemos
science
muchísima información
and
científica, pero
using it for
o no es
decision making.
amigable
We have a
o
lot
no
of
le llega a
scientific
nuestros
information,
tomadores
but
de
it's either
decisiones.
not
Necesitamos
friendly
que
or
la
it doesn't
ciencia
reach
sea
the
la que
decision makers. We
alimente
need
las
science
tomas de decisiones
to
a nivel nacional
feed
y
decision
global.
making at a national and global level.
Quería también invitar a todas las
I
delegaciones
would
a
like
que
to invite all the
participen
delegations to
pero que traten de
participate
participar al nivel más alto
at
posible.
the
Tenemos
highest
ya
level possible.
30 jefes de Estado y de gobierno
We have
confirmados
30 heads
de la
of state
región,
and government
confirmados tenemos
confirmed
solo
in the
5
region.
y es muy
We have
importante el presidente
only
Macron y
5
el
confirmed.
presidente
It's very
Chávez lo han
important.
dicho,
President
que
Macron and
tratemos de
President
estar
Chavez had
al
said
más
this.
alto nivel
We
para
need
demostrar
to
nuestro
try
compromiso
to
también
act at the highest level
a
to
ese
show our
alto nivel.
commitment
No quiero
at
dejar
this
de agradecer
high
profundamente a las
level
delegaciones
as well.
que a través de sus
I would like to
misiones en las
thank the
Naciones Unidas
delegations that through their
contribuyeron a la
delegations at the
negociación de la
UN have
declaración
contributed
política.
to the
Fue
declaration.
bastante
It
arduo
was
ese trabajo, tratar de
strenuous work
terminar con una
to
declaración
try
que
to
fuera suficientemente
obtain a
ambiciosa.
declaration that would be sufficiently
Esta
ambitious.
declaración, junto con los compromisos que sus países, que
And
nuestros
this has to do
países
with the
hagan,
commitments that
va
our
a
countries
convertirse en el
can
plan de
make.
acción
It will
oceánica de
become the
NISA, que
Ocean
va a ser
Action
nuestro
Plan
legado
of
colectivo. Así que
NICE.
los
That will be
invitamos
our
también
collective
a,
legacy.
en primer lugar, informar
So
sobre
we'd
el
like
avance de los
to invite you
compromisos
to inform
para la
yourselves
protección y
on
gobernanza del
the
océano que hayan
commitments
hecho
towards
anteriormente. Es
protection and
importante
governance of the
saber
ocean.
los avances de los
As you
compromisos,
may
pero
have
también
signed
a
earlier, we know that there is some progress, but also
compromisos.
to make new, to be ready to make
Así
new
que
commitments.
esperamos que los puedan anunciar
So
durante el
we
espacio
hope
que va a tener cada
that
país
these
en
can
el
be
plan.
announced
Antes de terminar, quiero agradecer
soon.
muchísimo a las embajadas de
I'd
Francia y
like
de
to
Costa
thank
Rica, pero en
the
especial
embassies
a
of
mi querida
France and
amiga, la
Costa
embajadora
Rica,
Adriana Murillo y su equipo por el gran trabajo
and
que
I'd like to
hicieron para
thank
organizar esto junto con la
Ariana
CEPAL.
Murillo and
Y para
their
cerrar,
team. They've done
quiero
so much together with ECLAC. And
usar una
in
cita
closing,
del oceanógrafo francés Jacques Cousteau, Él por muchos años se
I'd like
dedicó a
to
explorar
quote
el
Jacques
océano y
Jacques
ahora sus
Cousteau
nietos lo siguen
explored the
haciendo.
ocean for years,
Trabajó
and
mucho en
now
Costa
his
Rica y una vez
grandsons
dijo, el
are doing
océano nos
so as
une
well.
y es la
He
única
once said,
esperanza de
"The
la humanidad.
ocean brings us
Hoy más que
together. It
nunca,
is
el
mankind's
dicho
only
de que
hope,
todos estamos en el mismo bote
and we
se ha
are
vuelto
all on the
realidad. Y es
same
cierto,
boat. It
todos
has
estamos en ese
become a
mismo bote
reality.
y
We're
la verdad es que
all
nos
on the
toca
same
entre
boat,
todos
and
llevar ese bote a
we
buen
must
puerto.
carry
Les
it
deseo
forward
muchísimos
together."
éxitos
I would like
durante el
to
evento
thank you
de hoy
all,
y
and
agradezco una vez más a todos por acompañarnos. Muchas gracias.
thank you very much for joining us.
Muchas gracias, embajadora. De esta manera
Thank you, Ambassador.
concluye esta sesión de apertura.
We'd
Y
like to
paso la
conclude the
palabra a mi
opening session
colega
and
Ryan
transfer
Quiroga,
the floor to
jefa
Ryan
de
Quiroga,
Unidad de Agua y Biodiversidad
head
de la
of
Dirección de Recursos Naturales de la CEPAL. Muchas gracias.
Water and Biodiversity
Gracias, Gerardo,
at ECLAC.
y a nuestro panel de inauguración.
Thank you
Nos
very much,
estaremos
Eduardo,
moviendo, por
and
lo tanto, ya al panel
thank
1.
you
En
to
este
all for
panel, le recordamos a los que se han unido más
offering us
tarde
the
que
opening
tenemos
statements.
interpretación
We now
simultánea
begin with
inglés-español en el
panel
icono
1.
abajo y a la izquierda, que parece un mundo. We have
We
simultaneous
have
interpretation. You can
interpreting,
access
and it
this
is
with
at
the
the
world globe
bottom
icon lower and
left-hand
left to
side
your screen.
on the globe.
Sin más, entonces, agradecer
I'd
por
like
la
to
participación y
thank
darles la
everyone
bienvenida a
for
nuestro
their
panel 1,
participation and
que
welcome you
es
to
hacia una
panel
pesca
1,
sostenible y una gobernanza
towards a
eficaz
sustainable
del océano,
fishing
uno de los
and
sectores más importantes de la economía
effective
marina
ocean
de
governance,
nuestra
evidence
región
and
y que
dialogues
está
on
creciendo
strategies
cada vez
for
más rápido. En este
sustainable
panel
fishing
se propone
management,
compartir la
elimination
evidencia
of
disponible y realizar
prejudicial
diálogos
subsidies,
sobre
and
qué está
cooperation
sucediendo
for
en
the
nuestra
traceability
región
of marine
en
products.
temas
We're
marinos.
going to
¿Cuáles
talk
son las
about what is happening
estrategias
in our
para la
region.
gestión
What are the
pesquera
strategies
sostenible,
for
la
sustainable
eliminación de
fishing
subsidios
and the
perjudiciales
elimination
y la
of
cooperación para la
prejudicial
trazabilidad de productos marinos?
subsidies
Para
and
dar
traceability
inicio a
for
este
marine
panel,
products?
daremos
In
una
order
breve
to begin
presentación
with this
por parte
panel,
de
we
CEPAL
will
para brindar un marco
offer a brief
regional de los
presentation by
principales
ECLAC
elementos que se puede
to offer a
alimentar en esta
framework
discusión. Y luego tendremos el
that
gusto
will
de
help feed
recibir a
this
4 panelistas que
conversation, and we will
compartirán sus
then have 4
visiones y
panelists
propuestas en torno a
that
la
will be
temática.
sharing their
Y finalmente
perspectives
podremos escuchar
on
algunos
the
breves
matter. And
comentarios y
finally,
opiniones por
a
parte de
few
los
brief
gobiernos.
comments
Y si
from
nos
the
ajustamos
governments.
bien al tiempo,
And
posiblemente
if
también de alguna de
we
las agencias. En total,
stay
dada
within
la
the
hora,
allotted
contamos con
time,
1 hora y
also
5
perhaps
minutos
some
para este panel, así que seremos muy
comments from
estrictos
the
con el
agencies. We
manejo
will
del
be very
tiempo.
strict
Le
in timekeeping,
agradecemos a todos
so we would
ajustarse a los
thank you in
segmentos
advance for
ya
sticking to the
establecidos
allotted
para poder
times in
maximizar la
order to
participación
maximize
y reportar sustantivos
participation
de los panelistas y de los otros
and the
participantes
substantive
que hemos preparado
contributions
con
by
mucho
all
cariño.
our
A
panelists.
continuación, por lo tanto, daremos inicio a la
Following,
primera
we
presentación
will
del panel,
begin with the first
que es
presentation of the
evidencia y
panel,
breve
which is
diagnóstico de las
evidence
tendencias
and a
regionales hacia
diagnosis
una
of
pesca
the
sostenible y
regional
una
trends
gobernanza
towards
oceánica
sustainable
eficaz,
fishing,
a cargo de
effective
Marcia
governance,
Gambuki,
and
nuestra
we will be
especialista en
hearing from
biodiversidad
Marcia
de la
Gambuki
unidad
from the
de agua y biodiversidad de la
Unit
Dirección de
of
Recursos
Water and
Naturales de la
Biodiversity
CEPAL.
from the Natural
Tienes 10
Resources
minutos,
Division here
Marcia,
at
que más
ECLAC.
adelante
Marcia,
con tu
you
presentación.
have 10 minutes.
Sí, así es.
Entonces, muchas gracias. Bueno, con gusto saludarlos a todos. Es un honor estar aquí. Estábamos teniendo problemas con la conexión
greet you.
con Zoila Bustamante, que es parte de este panel. Espero que se logre resolver.
My colleague, who forms part of this panel, has had problems, and hopefully she will be able to connect.
En primer lugar,
First of all,
quisiera decir que
I would like to say
los productos del mar son la tercera
that
fuente de ingresos
sea products are the third source of income
más o menos de
in the region, which represents around just over $11 billion with a trade balance that is positive of around practically $9 billion. Now, how has this evolved over time? Well, out of 614,000 tons in some decades ago, we have reached a peak of over 24 million tons. And since then, we have had a a lower trend. We have changed the trend until we have fully recovered. In terms of aquaculture, that's a region we have changed from 40 tons to 4.3 million in 2022. And I believe it's important to highlight that over the past decades, we have had an increase of 397% when it comes to aquaculture. However, this dropped in the small island development states. Please allow me to change your presentation mode so that we can see your screen in presentation mode. On the other hand, I would like to say that in terms of sustainable fishing, we have the two extremes. On the one hand, the Pacific Central Eastern area, as you can see there. This is one of the most sustainable regions in terms of fishing in the world, and on the other hand, we have the southeastern Pacific, which only represents is 33.3% sustainable. The exploitation of these resources is not only in our region, in the 4 FAO fishing areas. You can see the distant fleet. Well, I'll talk about a regional average. The extraction of resources close to the exclusive zones in the region is highly subsidized. And you can see the breakdown there. And this zone that we said was the less sustainable zone, which is most overfished in the world. 82% of this fleet comes from Asia and only 12.3% from our region. And there, it's important to notice that this fleet is normally highly subsidized. There are estimations that were done in 2018 in 142 countries that resulted in more than $22 billion per year in terms of subsidies for fisheries, and 63% of those subsidies promote illegal, undetermined, and unregulated fishing. It's also important to mention that out of these, only 6% comes from the region, and that has meant that $1.3 billion have been given to this type of fisheries. And there are a few countries in the region that concentrate most of the total. 5 countries, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and Chile. On the other hand, well, how does this impact overfishing? On the one hand, we find that at a global scale, we can see the generates losses, annual losses of 15 million tons, equivalent to more than $15 billion. Latin America and the Caribbean also provided 4% of global employment in fishing and aquaculture. And an optimal management could increase captures by over 4 billion tons, with an estimated value of around $3 billion per year. And this obviously has a repercussion on the volume of captures. And here we find the main countries that would be benefited by an optimum management in the region. And in terms of employment, in this study, and you can see the authors on the bottom, the region that will most benefit in terms of gaining employment would be indeed Latin America and the Caribbean. And I would like to link this to artisanal subsistence fishing and also the voluntary responsible fishing schemes that are obviously multi-dimensional, the benefits that they provide. And first of all, I'd like to say that artisanal fishing has a fundamental relevance in the region. On the one hand, despite the fact that it is concentrated in 3 countries, Chile, Ecuador, and Brazil, when we look at this on the map, in terms of the proportion, countries such as Chile, that has strong industrial fishing, obviously they are not in dark red, but that is very important for the Caribbean. Artisanal and subsistence fishing in the Caribbean represents more than 80%. In fact, subsistence fishing represents more than 60% in small island developing states. And what is also very important is that 13% of the animal protein that small island development states are able are obtained from the sea is only 13%, but in the rest of the countries it's half of that, 6.5, and therefore subsistence fishing, we see, is again more relevant in small island development states, and less important in Mexico, Central America, and South America. You have 1 minute left. Why do I relate this with responsible fishing? Because in a study conducted at ECLAC, we find that voluntary schemes represents 75% of the fishing improvement programs promoted by the FAO is artisanal fishing, and therefore what we need is co-management possibility, because that is where our major possibilities are. And as mentioned by the ambassador, it is important for the region to head these international commitments, as there is a lot of scope for improvement. Only 14 countries have joined this, and when it comes to IOU fishing, the agreements could come into force, and that would be important. And therefore, our biggest opportunity lies in a sustainable management of fisheries, and therefore it's very important to support co-management in artisanal fishing, and obviously to implement all world agreements. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcia, for that summary of what is happening with the fishing and aquaculture sector and the structural differences that exist in the various subsectors. Now we will be listening to our 4 panelists. First of all, it's a great pleasure to introduce Javier Villanueva, who is a senior officer for fisheries and aquaculture at the regional FAO office. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes for a very concise summary. Please go ahead, Javier.
Bien, y bueno, ahí voy a ir midiendo
Thank
los
you,
tiempos para
Javier.
no pasarme
And I'll try to be on time. I'll also try to be very concise. I'm not going to use a presentation. And to make this presentation a little bit more friendly, so to speak, I would like to begin with a phrase that I always repeat, and that is that an adequate planning and adequate fishing guarantees fishing resources in the long term through its conservation and sustainable use and maintaining quality and sustainability for present and future generations. In this sense, the FAO is working with the Blue transformation. Why is this important? Well, we cannot forget that out of all food systems that exist in the world, fishing continues to be the only sector that produces food and that relies directly on the extraction of wild species from the environment. And beware of this, because sometimes it's compared to other productive sectors, but it's not the same thing, because we are extracting resources that are not domesticated. Some fishing species have begun to be domesticated. There are technologies and that gives rise to aquaculture, but most of the species today lack this type of technology in order to be produced. Now, talking a little bit about the blue transformation, what I would like to share with you is that us from the FAO, we're trying to change the vision towards aquatic food systems in order to truly enhance the contribution of fishing and aquaculture, not only in terms of food and nutritional security, but also in terms of employment sources. And we have already been told how many people in the region rely on this type of jobs, and sometimes we ask ourselves why the fish consumption is so low in this region. And this is primarily the result of the fact that products, despite the fact that they are captured and produced in our countries, in Latin America and the Caribbean, are often not accessible for people. In this sense, the FAO is working on the blue transformation in order to tackle this in a much more comprehensive manner. We have talked about international instruments, and I would like to reiterate that there is an international framework agreed upon by all countries in the world, comprised of voluntary instruments and also binding instruments. So we cannot leave aside the voluntary instruments, because this is where we find many instruments that help us to regulate or better plan fishing in countries in the region. Among them, the voluntary guidelines for the sustainability for small-scale fishing that primarily refers to the fishing sector and also applicable to governments and other stakeholders in order to achieve the sustainability of those fisheries. We have also spoken about the interaction of fleets. This happens in exclusive economic zones of countries. We didn't mention that terminology, where we find both artisanal and industrial fleets, and where the fishing planning plays a fundamental role in order to guarantee access to fisheries and the sustainability of resources for those that benefit from this. And we have also spoken about the distant waters fleets. Let us not forget that international waters in common oceans, there countries establish conventions in order to regulate the resources that they're all interested in. The countries that have a common interest in a zone create regional fishing planning entities, which is a forum to establish regulations that promotes the sustainable planning of fisheries. In this sense, I would also like to reiterate the importance of fishing research, because we rely on a resource that is wild, that is in the oceans, and if we cannot touch this or see this, research and science play a very important role. The FAO is focusing much of its effort on improving the data collection and the monitoring of fisheries so that countries may be capable of conducting a better management of their fishing resources.
Y para ir cerrando, quiero hacer alusión a los sistemas de comanejo. Esto es una práctica que está funcionando en muchos países, que debemos de seguir fomentando, de seguir buscando esquemas que permitan que todos los aliados, que todas las personas pues, están en interés, digamos, en un recurso, puedan participar también en la gestión y ordenamiento de esto. Con esto nos referimos básicamente que cuando se conforma un comité, un grupo o algo para poder establecer un comanejo, la ciencia tiene que estar presente también, las universidades, las asociaciones civiles. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos a veces o muchas veces generan la información o brindan la información adecuada a las instituciones también de gobierno, a los usuarios, donde encontramos pescadores, pescadoras, comercializadores, comercializadoras, etcétera, para poder tomar las mejores decisiones. Las cuestiones de comanejo, los sistemas de comanejo, hay muchos ejemplos exitosos en la región. Yo, para ir cerrando, les comento que en el marco de la transformación azul se han ido detectando diferentes ejemplos en diversas temáticas. En la página de la transformación azul de la FAO contamos con algunas fichas informativas sobre ejemplos exitosos en la pesca, tanto en la regulación, en la toma de datos, lucha contra la pesca ilegal no declarada y no reglamentada, para puntualizar la terminología oficial, así como visión estratégica para poder llevar a cabo algunos planes de desarrollo pesquero y acuícola en algunos países, con ejemplos puntuales y casos exitosos que se han dado tanto en esta región como a nivel global. Muchas gracias, Rayem. Quedo atento para cualquier pregunta más adelante.
Muchas gracias a ti, Javier. Muy claros los mensajes, muy sucinto. Te agradecemos también ajustarte al tiempo. Y en honor al mismo, a continuación queremos escuchar entonces a la señora Alice Tipping, que es la directora del Trade and Sustainable
Director of
Development
Trade and Sustainable Development at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. Please, Alice, go ahead. You have 5 minutes to share your most important messages. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Rayen, y muchísimas gracias también al CEPAL y, por supuesto, a los gobiernos de Francia y Costa Rica por la invitación. Voy a darme el lujo de hablar en español, pero me perdonarán como no soy nativamente hispanoparlante los errores que por seguro cometeré. Mira, quería con mi presentación profundizar quizás sobre un punto que introdujo Marcia sobre el acuerdo de la OMC sobre el subsidio a la pesca, porque creo que en el marco de la gobernanza del océano singular es uno de los acontecimientos más importantes que tenemos y uno que seguro será un tema importante para la conferencia en junio.
Aspects that we have,
Quizás
which will
tres
be one of the
puntos.
most
El
important
primero
aspects for the
sobre
conference in June.
la
3 points,
importancia del
perhaps.
tema de los
One
subsidios, el segundo
related to
sobre el
subsidies,
acuerdo
the
que se
second
logró en
one
2022,
on the
y el
agreement
tercero,
entered
que
into
creo
in
que para mí es
2022, and the
igualmente
third one,
importante,
which I
sobre las
believe is equally
negociaciones que
important,
siguen en Ginebra
on the
para
negotiations that are
añadir
ongoing in
otras
Geneva
reglas del
in
acuerdo
order
que
to
tenemos.
add other rules
Así
to
que
the agreement
profundizando quizás
that we have
primero
in
en la
place.
importancia del tema de
So
los
let us talk
subsidios, y
about
creo que
the
Marcia lo
issue of
introdujo muy
subsidies
bien
first of all.
con los gráficos que
And
que
this was
nos
introduced
dio
very well just now by
sobre
with the
las
graphs that were
flotas de
shown,
alta mar que pescan alrededor de
dealing with
Latinoamérica,
high seas fleets
y la
that fish
evidencia que
around
tenemos que
Latin
muchos de
America. And the
ellos
evidence that we
son
have is that
altamente
many of them
subsidiados.
are
Y
highly
quizás para
subsidized.
empezar,
And perhaps
de lo
to
primero,
begin
sabemos que hay
with,
subsidios
well,
buenos que
we know that
ayudan
there
a la
are good
mejora del manejo
subsidies
pesquero,
that support
como los
fishing, the
subsidios
management of
para la
fisheries, such as
investigación, del cual
subsidies
hablaba
for
Javier, pero
research that
también
Javier
sabemos que hay
referred to,
subsidios
but
que
we
son
are also aware
potencialmente
that there are
nocivos
subsidies that are
y
potentially
conllevan un
damaging,
riesgo que
that
podrían
imply
contribuir a la
a risk
sobrepesca o
in the sense that they could
sobrecapacidad.
contribute
Y eso
to
es, por ejemplo,
overfishing
el
or to
subsidio al
overcapacity.
combustible.
For example, the fuel
Sabemos que el
subsidy.
subsidio al combustible, por
We
supuesto,
know that
ayuda a los
the
pescadores
fuel
a pescar
subsidy, of
más, a
course,
pescar
helps
más lejos de la costa
fisher folk
y a
to fish
pescar
more,
con
to fish
métodos más
further from the
intensivos.
coast and using
Así
more
que hay
intensive
subsidios buenos y hay
methods.
subsidios
And so there
nocivos.
are
Quizá
good
tenemos
subsidies and then
un
damaging
estimado
subsidies.
del
And we
monto de
have an
subsidios.
estimate of the
Sabemos
amount of
que
subsidies. We
los
know
subsidios nocivos
that
rondan los
damaging subsidies
22 mil millones de
represent
dólares
around
americanos al
22
año.
billion US
Lo que
dollars
podría
per year. And
no
that
parecer
might
un
not
monto muy
seem
alto, pero
to be
sabemos
a
que esos
very high
subsidios pueden
amount,
tener
but we
un
know that
efecto muy
those
directo
subsidies can
sobre el
have a
recurso
very
marino y
direct
por lo
impact
tanto
upon
sobre la
marine
industria y
resources
también
and
sobre el medio
thus
ambiente.
upon industry
¿Qué se
and
logró
upon
en
the environment.
2022? Se logró un
Now, what was
acuerdo
it
en
that
la
we achieved in
OMC
2022? Well,
sobre
we entered into an
subsidios a la
agreement
pesca. Y este
in the
acuerdo
WTO on
fue políticamente y en la
fishing
práctica muy
subsidies. In
importante.
practice, this was
El acuerdo se
very
prohíben los
important.
subsidios
In
en
the agreement
situaciones muy
prohibits
específicas,
subsidies
en
in
particular
very
3,
specific
donde ya hay
situations,
una
specifically 3.
determinación de una autoridad
Where there is
que un
already a
barco ha estado
determination in place
involucrado
by an
en
authority in the
pesca
sense that
INR,
that a vessel has
o
been
una declaración que un barco de
involved in
pescadores está ya
INDRR
sobreexplotado,
fishing, or
o
that
tercera situación, en
a
áreas de
bank
alta
has
mar que
already
están fuera del manejo
over-exploited
de
or
un
in high
protector.
seas areas
Por darles un
beyond
ejemplo muy
adequate
pertinente,
management.
el
To provide you with a
sudeste
very
del
relevant
Océano Atlántico
example,
bajo
the southeast of the Atlantic Ocean in front of the coast of Argentina. This is not linked to UROC, and that would be an area where, under this agreement, when it comes into force, subsidies would be prohibited, and that is important. As mentioned by Fatia, we need 14 ratifications for the agreement to come into force. There are several ratifications that we are still missing from the Latin American region, or that we still lack, and therefore I support this invitation to ratify these agreements so that these agreements may become a reality for the region and for the ocean. Thirdly, there are negotiations underway that are extremely important, and therefore the agreement that we entered into in 2022 did not cover all the rules that have been proposed. As I said, it prohibits subsidies, but in these three very specific situations. There was also a different part of the agreement around which there was no consensus, and these were general regulations related to subsidies in general. In other words, these most risky subsidies, not only in these situations, but at a general level, they were more risky. And basically what we're talking about is a prohibition to a list of subsidies, including fuel subsidies, but they would only be prohibited if there is no effective management of fisheries in an area, and therefore many countries in Latin America that have effective fishing management, they can continue to be subsidized, but they would have a strong incentive in terms of continuing with their effective management. There are also exceptions, such as the differentiated treatment by the WTO for developing countries, and therefore there would be what would be excluded from the general rule is subsidies for artisanal fisheries defined by member states, and also an exemption or a transition period so that the rules could become applicable when it comes to subsidies for commercial fisheries. So in general terms, these are negotiations that I would say that we are almost achieving a consensus. In December, we lacked India, and now with the US, with the new US administration, we'll have to see what the new position by the US will be, but we are very close to establishing an agreement that will lead to a full agreement within the framework of the WTO in terms of subsidies to fisheries. So my second request for governments present here and for civil society is to continue with the approach and the effort of complying with our 14.6 goal and of ending up with a consensus on these additional rules, because they are extremely important both for fishing communities and their long-term profitability. And with this, I conclude. Thank you, Alice. Excellent. We now have this comprehensive viewpoint that confirms many of the elements that were mentioned previously in this panel. So we take a note of this in order to have a summary, a proper summary at the end. Now we'll listen to Noemí Espinosa Madrid, who has a presentation. She is the General Secretary of the Association of Caribbean States. Noemí has had some connectivity problems. I don't know if you're there, Noemí, if you're connected or not. Yes, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you okay. I have had some problems, but there is no interpretation from Spanish into English. Yes, we do have simultaneous interpretation. I'll try to speak in Spanish. Good morning. I am the General Secretary of the Association of Caribbean States, and I'll focus on the issue of ocean governance, because we have already heard that fishing in the Great Caribbean faces increasing pressures, as from including marine pollution, climate change, and a fragmented approach, and many coastal communities, artisanal fishermen face economic instability, increasing vulnerability, and even psychological stress. And that is why I would like to highlight that the Association of Caribbean States plays a unique regional role through its Caribbean Sea Commission, which is the only political mechanism with an intergovernmental mandate in order to deal with the sustainable management of the Caribbean Sea. And in 2025, the Association of Caribbean States is creating a special subcommission that connects governments, science, and community. And our mission here is to guarantee that the governance of oceans in the Caribbean reflects regional realities and that no voice is left out. So in this slide, I only have three. I talk a little bit about the Association of the Caribbean States. There are 33 states and territories. All of us that have coast in the Caribbean form part of the association, and we are presently developing a strategic 10-year plan that prioritizes marine governance and the protection of the Caribbean Sea, and that is at the center of our actions. And we also have acknowledged the Caribbean Sea as a special area within the context of sustainable development. So let's move on to the second slide now. I would like to emphasize that the Association of Caribbean States is able to respond to the fragmented governance frameworks in the Caribbean, because this lack of cohesion in terms of governance makes the region vulnerable to overimposed crises or overlapping crises, such as the fishing collapse, but also encompassing contamination. And therefore, the Association of Caribbean States is able to take on board that governance role, because we are the only regional organization that has a political mandate in order to unify or bring together all these efforts. So once again, via our Caribbean Sea Commission, we act as an interface between science, politics, and diplomacy. We advocate in favor of more solid and coherent governance, and we head initiatives such as the project to monitor the sandy coastline, and the subcommission for Sargasso. Now, we are creating presently in a parallel meeting this subcommission, which is a subcommission below our Caribbean Sea Commission, and this subcommission is a game changer, because it's a turning point for maritime diplomacy. And why do I say this? Because it is integrated by experts appointed by association member states, experts in fisheries, health, tourism, and the objective of this subcommission, Sargasso Commission, is to present a regional action plan for the monitoring, mitigation, and protection of the Sargasso ecosystem. And this mechanism reflects a new diplomacy model, which is technical, based on mandates, which is also inclusive and committed with the participation of coastal communities and of women. And in this sense, I would like to express my gratitude to ECLAC for organizing this panel and for including groups of women fisher folk, maritime authorities, and women from fishing communities. And to round up, I would like to say that in the Ocean Conference, we will continue to advocate in favor of the acknowledgement of Sargasso as an important impediment for sustainable fisheries, working with partners such as Guadeloupe and the Dominican Republic. And I would like to emphasize that for our region, for the Great Caribbean, where maritime borders are shared, governance must be the response in order to guarantee the well-being of present and future generations. As from that perspective, the Association Association of Caribbean States reiterates its commitment to act as a facilitating commitment for cooperation and for effective oceanic governance, integrating the visions of Caribbean, of Mesoamerica, and of the continent. We confirm in this sense our willingness to contribute actively to the three priority areas put forward by the governments of France and Costa Rica of promoting the successful conclusion of multilateral processes and to confirm the commitment of stakeholders for a full blue economy and to promote scientific knowledge about the oceans as a basis for informed and transformative decision-making. Finally, these priorities are not abstract goals. They respond directly to the structural needs of our region, the need for more solid coordination, the urgency of harmonizing economic development with marine conservation, and the demand to have a better data and scientific cooperation that is translated into public policies aligned with our Caribbean realities. These three priorities are fundamental to make ocean governance an assertive and effective response. Thank you very much.
Excelente, gracias, Noemí Espinosa.
Thank you, Noemí Espinosa, Secretary
de Estados del Caribe,
of
AIC
the
en
Association
español,
of the
las siglas
Caribbean States.
en inglés, y estaremos entonces en contacto para ver estos puntos del Gran Caribe. Es una de las áreas prioritarias importantes para la CEPAL y para el trabajo que estamos llevando hacia adelante en el tema de océanos. Nuestra siguiente panelista ha tenido dificultades en términos climáticos en la parte del sur, en donde reside la señora Zoila Bustamante, que es presidenta de la Confederación de Pescadores Artesanales de Chile y también presidenta de la Unión Latinoamericana de la pesca artesanal, y no ha podido conectarse. Por lo tanto, lo que vamos a hacer ahora, presentando las disculpas del caso, es pasar a la siguiente sección de este panel, que invita a algunos representantes de gobierno que quisieran formular algún comentario, que pudieran hacer alguna propuesta, compromiso. Le vamos a pedir la palabra, hay una manito abajo en su plataforma para que puedan intervenir y nosotros ver si ya lo podemos pasar a panelista y que puedan entonces intervenir. Queremos sí resaltar que estas intervenciones serán de 2 minutos máximo para poder tener mayor nivel de participación. Entonces pido también a mi equipo a ver si me puede apoyar con alguna de las solicitudes de intervención que abrimos el webinario para este minuto, manifestar si tienen algunas personas interés en intervenir, gobiernos y en segundo lugar agencias. De no ser así, pasaríamos a pedir una ronda de comentarios de cierre a los panelistas.
We would request closing comments to our panelists.
No sé si Marco, ¿tú ves alguna de las manos levantadas?
Marco, do you see any raised hands?
Con dificultad para mirar la lista
I
de los
cannot see the
colegas que están
list
conectados
of the
en
colleagues
este
that are
primer panel.
connected in
Hay
this
una
very
persona que es
first
Roberto
panel.
Rosero, que
Mr.
él
Roberto
es,
Rosero
no es panelista, es
He is not a
participante y
panelist,
levanta la
just a
mano. No sé
participant, but
si
he is
le damos
raising his
permiso
hand. Do
para
we
que pueda
allow
comentar.
him
Si
to
es de
present his
gobierno se
comments?
puede, por favor,
Governments,
adelante,
yes.
identificar. Vamos a dar
If
2 o 3
you can
palabras.
identify yourself,
Adelante, gracias,
yes,
Franco.
please. Thank you,
Y ahí le
Franco.
envié la invitación, don Roberto, para que pueda desmutear su
Okay, I
micrófono.
sent
Solamente
the
va a poder hablar.
invitation so that you can unmute. You will only be able to speak.
Roberto Rosero.
My name is Roberto
Soy
Rosero.
docente investigador de la
I
Universidad
am
Central
teacher
del
and
Ecuador.
researcher in
Y bueno,
Ecuador
nosotros hemos
Central
estado
University.
trabajando en
We
diferentes
have
ámbitos, sobre
been
todo lo
working in different
relacionado a la
areas,
pesca
especially
artesanal
everything related to
y también
artisanal
al desarrollo de las
fisheries,
cuentas
and also
ecosistémicas
the
vinculadas a
ecosystemic
ecosistemas marinos
areas
en
related to
la
the
Reserva Marina de
marine
Galápagos que
systems,
tenemos.
the
Para nosotros es
Galapagos
fundamental
Marine
también
Reserve, which
en
is a
tratar de
fundamental
encontrar
area for
recursos
us to
que
be able to find the
fomenten las
resources
investigaciones
that
que
are
llevamos a
really
cabo
promoting the
varias
research that we're carrying
instituciones
out.
investigativas.
Many
Y para
of
eso
our
también
organizations are working in this
mis
area.
palabras
And
sobre
my
el tema de
words
la reunión llevada el día de hoy a cabo,
in the
de
activities
tratar
that we're
de
carrying out
vincular esos
today is
recursos
to
hacia las
try to
instituciones que
link these resources
estamos
to
llevando
those
este tipo de
institutions that
investigaciones
we are
y
carrying out,
aplaudir también
and also to
muchísimo esta
congratulate
iniciativa que está llevada
this
a cabo por la CEPAL.
initiative that is being done by ICLAC.
Perfecto. Muchas
Thank you.
gracias.
Thank you very much.
¿Alguna otra persona que
Anybody
quisiera
else would
manifestar
like
comentarios,
to
sugerencias, posiciones
present comments,
respecto al tema que
suggestions,
estamos
positions
conversando?
related to what we are talking
Tal
about?
vez se podría abrir el micrófono
Maybe we can
a
open the
todos
microphone for
y de esta
everybody,
forma más rápida
and
podemos intervenir.
thus we
Tenemos
can then
todavía unos
participate. Now we
15
have
minutos.
some
De lo
15
contrario,
minutes.
volvemos a los panelistas.
Otherwise, we return to our
Pero sí nos
panelists.
interesaría si dos
But
personas
yes,
más.
we would be interested
Ya
in
está hecho. Me
having.
informa entonces el equipo. Los
Okay,
micrófonos
the
están
team
abiertos.
is
Por favor,
mentioning
adelante.
that microphones are open
Los que
for
quieran
you
intervenir.
to participate.
Los y las que quieran intervenir.
For anybody that would like to participate today.
Okay. Ha habido mucha materia que se ha ido cubriendo y muchos
Much has been
elementos
mentioned and many
que se han
of the
manifestado.
different elements that
Así
have been
que
expressed
en
here as well.
esta circunstancia lo que haríamos es pedirle
What
tanto a
we
Javier
would
como
like
a
doing
Alice
is to
y
request from Javier or
también
Alice,
a Noemí si pueden
and
2 minutos
Noemi,
más
whether
cerrar algunos de
in
los
maybe
puntos que
2
no
more
pudieron
minutes, close
profundizar
those
respecto
topics that
también
you were
de
not
lo que se
able to
presentó por
delve
parte
into,
CEPAL de la mirada
especially
regional
everything related to the
que
regional
también
perspective of the
presentó
CLAC
Marcia.
that was presented by
Adelante,
Marcia as well.
Javier.
So Javier, you have been acknowledged.
Muchas gracias, Rayen. Y bueno,
Thank you
también
very much,
unirme a
Ryan.
las colegas que me acompañaron en este panel en el
And
agradecimiento a la
again, I
CEPAL por
would like
organizar
to
este
thank
evento, Blue
ICLAC
Talks.
for
Bueno,
organizing this
básicamente
event, these
reiterar
Blue
la
Talks,
necesidad de la
and I would like
investigación
to
pesquera como
repeat the
parte
need of research in
fundamental de
fishery
lo que viene
as a
siendo el
fundamental
inicio
aspect of
o la
what would
generación de la
be
información para el
the
ordenamiento sostenible de la pesca.
information for
Dentro de
sustainable
un
development of
sistema
fishing.
básico de ordenamiento
Within
tenemos
a
algunas etapas
basic
como los objetivos,
organization
el
aspects, we
establecimiento,
have
formulación de
the
políticas,
goals, the formulation of
legislación,
policies, legislation,
reglamentaciones específicas,
specific
adopción de regulaciones,
regulations, the
implementación,
adoption of
seguimiento, control,
regulations,
vigilancia,
the
inspección,
control, surveillance,
procesos de revisión, pero
inspection,
todo esto se
review
nutre
process, but all
siempre de la
this
información
is
que se genera y de
always
los datos
feeding
que se
from
colectan.
the information that
No nos
is
olvidemos
obtained and
también por eso la
collected. Let us
importancia
not
del
forget, and this
comanejo que
is
fue
the
mencionado
importance
también al
of
inicio,
what was already
la
mentioned at the
importancia de este
beginning,
tipo de
the
acciones donde hay un
importance of these type of
involucramiento
actions
tanto de
where
todos
we
los
have
usuarios,
involvement
de todos los
of all
pescadores,
users,
pescadoras,
of
quienes están en la
all
cadena de valor, en la
fishery
comercialización, etcétera, para
activities
reportar
that
también
are within the
estas
whole
obligaciones
chain
que
to
se
be able
tienen
to
para poder
report
tener
on these
mejores datos,
obligations
mejor
that we have to
confiabilidad
have
de qué es lo que está
better
pasando,
data,
cuántos
better
recursos tenemos y que esto nos permita poder alcanzar
availability and
una
the resources
sostenibilidad
we have and
en
to
la
be
pesca.
able to reach
Y desde luego
sustainability
también
in the
reiterar la
fishing
necesidad
activities,
de
and
la
of
adopción
course
de
to
este marco
repeat the need of
internacional
adopting this
vinculante y no
international
vinculante
framework
para
that
poder a
is
nivel nacional y a
binding
nivel
and
regional
non-binding to
poder
be
caminar
able
hacia una
to
pesca más
grow
sostenible, una pesca
towards a
más responsable.
sustainable
Con esto nos referimos
fishing
también a las
activity,
directrices
and we
voluntarias
are
de la
talking
pesca
about the
en pequeña
voluntary
escala, como ya yo
activities
comentaba
of
anteriormente,
fishing.
pero
And
de la misma
as I
forma
mentioned
algunos
earlier, the
instrumentos que
same
no son
way we
vinculantes,
are
como las
working
directrices
in the different
voluntarias
activities
para
as
la
the
actuación del Estado
voluntary
del pabellón.
guidelines for
Aquí hablamos
the
de la
different areas.
responsabilidad que
Here
tienen
we're
los
talking
países
about the
para
responsibilities of the
monitorear,
different
dar
countries in
seguimiento, control,
monitoring and
vigilancia hacia las
doing the
embarcaciones que se
monitoring and
encuentran bajo su
surveillance of the
registro.
vessels that
Otro
are
instrumento
in these
fundamental en
areas.
esto es el
Another
acuerdo sobre
important
las medidas del
aspect
Estado
is
rector del
the
puerto,
agreement
que
of
permiten
the
que a través de un estándar
port
común acordado por todos los países
activities
en el mundo,
as a standard
se pueda
that
hacer
has been
inspecciones
agreed
o
upon
controlar
in this
también a las
area. We
embarcaciones de
can
flotas
control
distantes
these
que a lo
different
mejor
vessels,
operan
the
frente a las
distant
costas
vessels
de
that
esta
are
región
operating in
y
front of
que
the
entran luego a los puertos que se
coasts of the
encuentran en
region
América
that go
Latina y el
into the
Caribe para
ports
llevar a cabo
later
sus
on
operaciones.
to Latin America
El
and the
acuerdo sobre las
Caribbean
medidas
for
del
their
Estado
activities.
rector del
The
puerto es un
agreements
acuerdo
on
muy
these
novedoso,
areas
muy innovador, y que
And it
focaliza
is
su objetivo
an
más
activity
allá
that
de
is
los
focusing
típicos
the
embarcación
goals in
pesquera
the
que
different
nosotros
areas
conocemos,
of
que a
the
lo
fishing
mejor es
activities that
un
we all
palangrero, un
know
arrastrero,
about.
una embarcación de cerco, porque también tiene dentro de su objetivo las
We
embarcaciones de
understand
actividades
that these
relacionadas a la
are the
pesca.
different
Y
activities
con esta se
related
refieren
to
a todas las
fishing. And here
embarcaciones
we're talking
que
about the
también
different
proveen
types of
alguna
vessels
especie de
that are
soporte
really providing
previo,
some sort
durante o
of
después de las
support
capturas.
either prior,
Embarcaciones
during,
que
or
a lo
after
mejor
capture.
traen la
Maybe
pesca
vessels
hacia los
that
puertos,
bring
que hacen
fishing to the
transbordos en alta
different
mar
ports that are
y
doing
que
the
a través de estas embarcaciones reefers, por ejemplo,
transshipment
traen los
in
productos a
high
América
seas,
Latina y el
and
Caribe para
those
que sean
that bring
comercializados
products
o
to Latin America and the
exportados.
Caribbean that can be
Pasando
exported
también a
and
un punto
marketed.
intermedio,
And now
se
going
cuenta
to
con
an
las directrices
intermediate
voluntarias
point,
para
we
el
find the
control o el
voluntary
manejo del
guidelines for the
ordenamiento
control
sostenible de los
or
transbordos en alta mar y que
of
también juega un papel muy
transshipment,
importante
and it plays
para
a
lo que
very
está
important
ocurriendo
role
en
in
las
what is
aguas
happening
internacionales
in
actualmente y
international seas,
poder generar de
and
manera común
be
un
able
estándar
to
para poder
generate
saber
a
qué es lo que sucede
standard to be
durante
able
esas
to understand
operaciones.
what is happening
Yo con
throughout
eso
these
pararía
operations. And I would
y
stop
daría
here.
nuevamente las gracias
And
por la intervención.
No, gracias
thank you
a
for
ti,
the different
Javier, a FAO, nuestros
participations. Thank
colegas
you,
siempre
Javier,
colaborando.
and
Tenemos la buena
FAO and our
noticia
colleagues.
que
We have very
la
good
señora
news right
Zoila
now.
Bustamante ha
Ms. Zoila
podido
Bustamante has
conectarse.
been able to
Entonces vamos a dar
connect
paso
now,
para que ella
and
pueda dar
we will give
sus
her the floor
palabras,
so that she can
sus
present her
consideraciones
words
y propuestas.
and her
Zoila Bustamante,
proposals.
presidenta de la
Zoila
Unión Latinoamericana
Bustamante,
de la
she
Pesca
is
Artesanal
president
de
of
la
artisanal
Confederación de
fishing
Pescadores Artesanales de Chile.
in
Es un gusto
Chile, and it
tenerte con
is a
nosotros y
pleasure
muchísimas gracias
having you
por hacer
here, and
todo el
thank you
esfuerzo de
very much
conectarte
for
a
making this
pesar de las
tremendous effort
dificultades
of connecting, even though
climáticas que están
you have
atravesando
the
en
climate
tu territorio. Por
situations
favor, adelante.
that your
Muchas
territory is
gracias.
going
5
through. Thank you
minutos.
very much. You have 5 minutes. Thank you and good morning. My apologies, but we have a really strong storm here in the south of Chile, in the region of Los Lagos in the Pacific Ocean. And apologizing again for not being able to connect any earlier. I just arrived from an event that is related to oceans and is also related to what we will be dealing with in the international event in France. But as already properly mentioned, Mr. Villanueva, right before these events existed, we have been working as artisanal fishing sector in the regional levels in Latin America, as well as at the international level with the World Forum. Therefore, we have much to say in this regard, but what I am concerned about, and I would like to be able to transfer this information, is that unfortunately in these type of events, artisanal fishery is not present. And to be able to participate, we are using other entities. I really want to make it clear and leave it here with you so that you keep it in mind. We are invited to a parallel event, but not artisanal fisheries, but together with maybe a university, an NGO, but not us, the ones that really can be talking about how we are living the oceans in our territories. We're working, as already well mentioned by Mr. Villanueva, we are working. We have been working 4 years in the voluntary guidelines that are fully aligned with what is happening. This year or last year, we celebrated 10 years of implementation of countries where some countries have taken this or not, and we are still working on this area where countries can be working in this area where we see the rules of the game and what is needed by the artisanal fishermen. We have been working together with APLAC with everything related to the distant fleets. These fleets have been funded by different organizations, and they are funded to be able to look for products in our areas. What we have been able to obtain is that this funding is dropping in a 50%. And what we want is that this fund, that other 50% that is not being used, can be helping the other sectors that have been harming artisanal fisheries. We have been working with BBNJ, that as CONAPACH in in Chile, we subscribed an agreement at Latin American level so that the Secretariat of BBNJ is in Chile. We have to remember that we have two countries that want this position, Brussels and Chile, and we're working together with Latin America and Chile so that this Secretariat is living in Chile in Valparaiso. Therefore, we have been working with what you have been talking about, and we have been talking with the port authorities. We should not forget that when different shipments come in and unload their products, the artisanal fishing prices will really drop because what they need is to bring their fishing activities. Our prices will drop tremendously, and it is an important issue. But I would like to insist, artisanal fishery, not because we're living in this area, not because we're living in the south of Chile and Panama or Colombia or anywhere else in Latin America and Central America, we're not concerned of what is happening. We are highly concerned, and we have an international agenda with what is happening in these activities in the different at local level or others. And we're working with everything that is related to fishing outside of the 200 miles. We have to remember that we have fleets that is fishing outside of the 200 miles. Therefore, we have fleets that are navigating outside of these 200 miles. And this is the message that I would like to leave with you for my 5 minutes. I don't know if I have time, but the message is that every single decision that is being made in these international events where we have very little participation or incidents, hopefully we will be able to have a higher incidence. And this means that we will be taking into account the observations that we're presenting as sector. We know when the water color changes, what is happening. We know what has been happening with climate change. We know what we're going through with climate that is warming up. We have waters that have reached higher degrees, but because somebody will just go there and be able to swim in this waters, they enjoy it, but the resources will run away from this area, and we're not able to work and be able to feed our families. Therefore, much is being done at an empirical level that us as fishermen can be able to transmit. But if you do not hear what we're saying, it's that word, and I insist again, what I would like to express is that the decision-making process should be taking into account those people that are they're living out of the sea. From my desk, I can do wonderful things. But if I'm not there, right in situ, I am creating laws that for those that are donating, or laws that for those that believe they're doing it properly, but not laws that believe that they really need it and they're living at this sector. I talked about this yesterday. The ocean today, tomorrow, and the day after, and the new generations will be the source of food if we take care of it. And who are the best caretakers if we are the ones that live there? We are the ones that are seeing that water is taken from the seas to create drinking water. Will that be the future of our land? Yes, but if we are not taking care as a whole of this area, we will be displaced, and nobody will be protecting anything because they will not do what to do. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to hear you. And the token is that in the region, we can have the ocean, which is key. It's key to the communities that live off artisanal fishing.
¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me?
Sí, se escucha perfecto.
Yes.
Okay. Entonces, muchas gracias a Zoila
So thank you very much to Zoila for the effort made to connect.
tan
and
importantes.
to offer us
Ahora sí,
such an
muy
important
brevemente
message.
quisiéramos pedir a
We would like to ask
nuevamente un comentario de cierre, 2 minutos, 3 minutos máximo.
the speakers
Ella es
for
directora del
a
Trade
quick
and Sustainable Development del Instituto International Institute for Sustainable Development. Alice, si nos puede dar
closing comment,
2
if
minutos
you
más,
could
algunos
offer
takeaways,
us
sería
a
muy bueno para
couple
nosotros.
of key
Gracias.
takeaways. That would be very
Bueno,
positive
muchas
for us.
gracias,
Thank you.
Rayen.
Well, thank you,
Bueno, 3
Rayan.
cosas quizás
3 things,
más cortas. Y la primera es que esta es la segunda vez que oigo a Zoila
perhaps
Rodríguez
briefer,
hablar,
but
y
this is
cada
the
vez que la
second or
oigo,
third time that I hear
perdón,
Zoila
Zoila Bustamante, pero cada vez que la oigo me
Bustamante.
inspiro.
Every time
Porque
I
al
hear
final
her,
eso es lo que estamos
it
intentando
is
hacer
extremely
desde nuestros
inspiring.
escritorios, y
We're
soy la
trying to do
primera
this
en
from our
aceptar que si
desks,
hacemos
and
leyes
I'm
que
the
no
first one to
tienen
accept
un
that if we
arraigo
have
en la
laws that
realidad
don't
vivida de las comunidades,
are
no
not
sirven.
in sync with
Así que gracias a la CEPAL por
reality,
incluir
with
esa
our
voz en
lives,
esta
it
discusión,
just
porque
doesn't
esa voz
work.
nos arraiga,
So thank you
creo,
very
a
much,
todos,
because that
nos ancla
voice
para
anchors
hacer,
us in
tener una
reality.
metáfora mejor. 2, quizás palabras más. Para mí el
Second,
acuerdo sobre subsidios
for
de
me,
la
this
OMC
agreement on
fue
subsidies
también un
by the
trabajo de
WHO was
coherencia,
also
llegando quizás a lo que
a
dijo
matter of
la señora de la
coherence.
comunidad caribeña, porque estábamos intentando formar reglas
We're trying
de subsidios en la
to
OMC,
form
pero
subsidy
tenemos que
laws
aprender cómo
with the
funciona la
WTO,
pesca INDNR
but
y
we
su
need to
control,
understand
cómo
how
funcionan
fishing
las ROPS,
understands,
cómo
how
funciona
its
y no
controls
funciona el
work.
manejo pesquero, e intentar
Maybe fishing,
formar un tratado
and trying
vinculante que
to
tenía
have
sentido y que tenía sentido
an
para el
agreement
mundo
that would make
marino y
sense
para la
for
economía marina,
the
haciéndolo desde Ginebra.
marine world,
Así que fue también un trabajo de
doing it
coherencia en que
from
nos ayudaron muchísimo expertos
Geneva.
latinoamericanos. Y he
So there are
visto
many
en la lista
important
participantes gente como Enrique Sanjurjo, gente
aspects,
como
such
Andrés
as Enrique
Cisneros,
Sanjurjo
y
and
ellos
Cisneros,
trajeron de
and they
la
have
región también
brought
su experiencia y su
their
conocimiento, que nos ayudó
experience
muchísimo.
from the region.
Último punto, que no podríamos haber logrado este acuerdo y no estaríamos
Another
donde
thing is we
estamos en
could
las
not have
negociaciones sin
achieved
el
this
liderazgo de los
agreement
gobiernos de
if we didn't
Latinoamérica.
have the
Tuvimos muchos
leadership of
presidentes de
the
las negociaciones
different
de
governments
la
of Latin
región, de
America.
México, de
We've
Trinidad y Tobago
had
y
a
también de
lot of
Colombia,
participation
y
from
teníamos la presencia y el
Colombia, from
apoyo y
Trinidad
la
and Tobago.
intervención
We've had this
constante,
support
constructiva
and
de los gobiernos de la región.
constructive
Que tiene
actions
sentido,
of the
dada
governments of
la
the
importancia,
region.
como hemos
It
visto,
makes
la
sense
importancia de un tratado, de un control a los subsidios
of the
que
importance of control
estamos
and subsidies,
intentando acabar con
trying
en la
to end
OMC. Así que última petición es, creo que estamos
these at the
casi
WTO.
por
We're
acabar
almost
en las nuevas reglas más
ready
generales, que
to
tendrán
conclude the new
un
rules, the
abajo
more general
más
ones,
general. Y un último esfuerzo,
and
un último
one
fuente de
last
apoyo, creo que
effort
será
and
muy útil para que logremos
piece
llegar a buen puerto
component
con
of
estas reglas.
support
Muchas gracias.
to conclude and
Muy bien,
into fruition.
gracias,
Thank you.
Alice. Entonces, pediríamos a Noemí Espinosa, secretaria general de la
So
Asociación
we'll
de
ask
Estados
Noemi
del
Espinosa
Caribe,
from
si por
the
favor nos puede
Caribbean
dirigir
to
unas últimas reflexiones,
perhaps offer a
2
few
minutos a 3
final
max.
comments,
Adelante.
2 or 3
Muchas
minutes.
gracias.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias de nuevo, y yo quisiera
Yes, thank you
empezar
very
con
much. I would like to
también con las
begin
palabras de la señora Zoila Bustamante,
with
y también
the
expresarle que es un
remarks
verdadero
by
honor
Zoila Bustamante
compartir
and
este
say that
panel
it
con
is a
ella. Yo
true
soy
honor to
la
share this panel with
relativamente
her.
nueva secretaria
I'm
general de la
relatively
Asociación de
new
Estados
at
del
the
Caribe
Secretary
desde enero,
General of
y
the
estoy, como dije en mi
Association of
presentación,
Caribbean
haciendo un plan
States,
estratégico a
and
10 años para la asociación.
we
Y un
are making
punto
plans
de
for
partida
10
de ese plan
years. It
estratégico
is
es el
very interesting. The
involucramiento de las
strategic plan
comunidades, en
includes the
particular
involvement
de las
of
comunidades
communities
lideradas por mujeres, por
led
lo que
by
la
women.
señora Zoila Bustamante nos
That
dijo
is why
mejor que
Zoila
cualquiera nos pudo
Bustamante
haber
said
dicho,
it better
que
than
ellos tienen el
anyone else.
conocimiento
We
empírico
have the
de
empirical
lo que se debe de
knowledge,
hacer. Entonces hay que escuchar esas voces, y
and
eso
we need to
es
hear
un
these
punto de
voices.
partida de
This
nuestro
is
plan
a starting
estratégico.
point
La
for
segunda
our
parte es, como
plan.
también
The
mencioné,
second part,
que la
as I
Asociación de
mentioned,
Estados del Caribe tiene a
the
todos los
Association of
países que tienen
Caribbean
costas en
States
el Mar Caribe, y tiene un mandato
includes
de
all of the
defender
Caribbean
el Mar
countries, and
Caribe
it has a
como una
mandate to
zona especial para el desarrollo
keep the
sostenible.
Caribbean
Y
as a
eso nos
special area for
posiciona en
sustainable
una
development.
ventaja
This
bastante amplia
means
para
that it
ser
works
el
within
mecanismo
a
de
very
que maneje la gobernanza
advantage
del
for
Mar
those
Caribe.
managing
Tenemos
the
una
governance of
comisión
the
del Mar
Caribbean
Caribe que
Sea.
además tiene una
We have a commission of
subcomisión
the
sobre los
Caribbean Sea. It has
sargazos.
a subcommission
Entonces,
on
simplemente
sargassos.
invitarles a todos
So I'd like to invite you all
a asegurarse de que la asociación
to
sea que pueda jugar este rol
guarantee that the
de
association can
coordinador y de
play this
gobernanza. Hay muchas
coordination
otras o
role
varias
as
otras, no
governance.
muchas,
There are many other
otras
places,
instancias, pero no están tan
instances
articuladas como la nuestra. Y
that
eso es
are not
otro,
as
otro
articulated as
punto
ours, but
fundamental
that is
de
another
nuestro plan
fundamental point
estratégico. Y
of our
todo esto lo
strategic
vamos a llevar a la
plan.
conferencia de los
And we can
océanos
take
porque sí
this
creemos que
all
es importante
to the
que en estos
conference
espacios
of the
multilaterales
ocean,
globales se
because these
reflejen las
global
realidades de
multilateral
nuestras diferentes
spaces
comunidades, de nuestros
reflect the
diferentes
reality
países,
of
como son todos los países que tienen
our
costa en el Mar
states.
Caribe, y que las perspectivas regionales alimenten esas perspectivas globales, porque es en lo regional donde están las soluciones. Entonces, muchas gracias de nuevo a la CEPAL por invitarme a ser parte de
This is where we find the solutions in the ocean. So thank you to ECLAC for inviting me to this.
A usted, secretaria general, muchas gracias. Por último, quisiera, Zoila Bustamante, 2 minutos para unos comentarios de cierre de tu parte.
Thank you, Zoila. I'd also like to offer the floor
sí, gracias.
to you for a few closing statements.
Como pueblos pesqueros
For us as fishing people in Latin America and Central America, it is extremely important, as I mentioned, to be heard.
Más importante también es pensar en el futuro.
Especially thinking of the future.
Con el cuidado. Pero cuidado.
Thinking of the future with care.
No sé si me entienden, porque a mí me tiene
and that we not be forgotten. I'm very concerned because there's a lot of talking, but no thinking. In the coastal areas, there are many people that live of the ocean that feed millions of families. And there was a study made by FAO that says that over 4 million people that work in coastal areas, 4 million people, women. In Chile, there are millions of people women that live off of the coast. And all these women, all these communities, men and women, are present. And we are living day to day, from generation to generation. We're communities that have lived on the coast all our lives. And thanks to this life on the coast, there is still foodstuffs that come from the ocean, and we are able to take care of our environment with management areas, with repopulation, with scientific committees, with management plans, a lot. Everything that governments have made up, we have undertaken to protect new generations. But it doesn't make sense if I forget about the people that live there. So we've done this many times. I repeat this because there's amnesia. There would seem to be amnesia in some cases with some groups for us as fishing peoples of Latin America, of Central America, and of the world.
Toda la gente que apoya este tipo de cuidados de los océanos, de todo, no se olvide que hay mucha gente que no es un donante.
Please don't forget that there are many people, that it's not an NGO, that it's not just one person, that it's not one government, that there are many people involved. It is what we're doing today. We are trying to feed our people. I always say this, I don't want to stop saying it. When there's a tragedy, when there are earthquakes and tsunamis and all these things that we're experiencing today, artisanal fishing goes out to feed the people here in Chile or anywhere in the world. And it's not about money. It's to help. We need to take this into account. That's what I wanted to say, and hopefully this event will not just be yet another event, but
que no sea un evento más, sino que sea un evento que deje raíces.
I hope that
pero que
it
deje
will
raíces para la gente
leave
que realmente lo necesita.
something
Eso,
of
muchísimas
substance
gracias
to
por
us
la
and to those who
invitación.
need it. Thank you for the
A todos los
invitation.
que tuvieron
Thank you to all who
no sé la palabra, a todos los que pensaron que mis palabras en estos eventos pueden ser un aporte. Eso, muchísimas gracias.
My words here today could be a
Gracias
contribution.
a ti,
Thank you.
entonces, y a todos nuestros panelistas. Bueno, ha llegado
I thank
el
all
momento de
panelists.
hacer
The time has come
una síntesis muy
to
breve
make
de
a very
este
brief
muy
summary
importante
of
panel
this
1 en
very
nuestro
important
grupo.
panel.
Ha sido enriquecido este panel con las miradas
This
de la
panel has
región
been
que
enriched
presentó la CEPAL, así
by
como los 4
perspectives from the
panelistas
region
que
presented
nos
by ECLAC and also by
acompañaron.
the 4
Y
panelists
en
that have
resumen,
accompanied us
nos
this morning.
parece
And
que
in
existe un
summary,
gran
we believe that
consenso
there is
respecto
a
de los
major
procesos de toma de
consensus around
decisiones que tienen que ser colaborativos y participativos para que se pueda incluir a todas las
collaborative
voces de
processes
los
in order to
actores
include
involucrados
all
en los
the voices of
mecanismos y en los marcos
stakeholders
regulatorios y en los
involved in
sistemas de
mechanisms,
gestión
regulatory
de la
frameworks,
pesca
and
para que sea
management
una pesca
systems,
sostenible, azul y
so that this may become
internacionalización.
a sustainable,
También se
a
trajo a
sustainable
colación la importancia de la
fishery
producción de
within the
series
blue economy.
estadísticas
And we
y
also
de evidencia
mentioned the production
científica
of
para la mejor gestión
statistics
del océano,
and
de los mares y
scientific
de
evidence
nuestros
for the better
recursos
management of
marinos,
the ocean, of
así
seas, and of our
como
marine
se
resources.
subrayó
And
que los mecanismos y
likewise,
los
what was
instrumentos que
highlighted was that the
necesitamos estar
mechanisms and instruments
implementando para la
that
transformación
need
azul
to be
son
implemented for the blue
también
transformation
importantes
are
en términos de
also
innovación
important in
y de
terms of
modificación de los
innovation
que
and in
actualmente
terms
existen,
of
¿no? Y de también es necesario
modifying
ir
what is
modificando las
already in existence. And we
prácticas
also need to
de
modify
pesca y maricultura
fishing
para
and
que puedan ser más
sea
sostenibles,
culture practices
inclusivas
so that
y
they may
tengan
be more
criterios de
sustainable and
equidad
inclusive
distributiva de los
with a
recursos
distributive
marinos a los que
equality
tienen
when it
acceso,
comes
por
to the
supuesto, nuestros
marine
pescadores
resources
artesanales, el
that are
autoconsumo
artisanal.
y también
The fisher
las
folk
empresas más industriales,
can
¿no?
gain access to for
También
self-consumption and
muy
also
importante la
for the more
modificación de los
industrial
subsidios perjudiciales que
companies. And we
existen
also
y
need to
que
eliminate
llevan a la
the damaging
sobrepesca,
subsidies that exist and
como
that
ya hemos
lead
dicho, y
to
al desperdicio y a la
overfishing and
contaminación,
to waste
y
and
trabajar mucho
contamination,
más en esquemas
and
de
to work far
comanejo,
more
de
on
manejo
co-management
gobierno,
schemes,
pescadores,
on
asociatividad
management
para el
between
manejo de los
government,
recursos
fisher folk,
costeros
and
en territorios
association, basically to
específicos que
deal
han
with
dado muy
coastal
buenos resultados.
resources in specific territories, because that has given us
Importantísimo
very
también
good
avanzar en
results.
la
And what is
ratificación
also
y el
very
uso de los
important is
marcos
to advance in the
vinculantes
ratification and
tales
in
como los
the
voluntarios que acabo
binding
de
frameworks and
mencionar,
also
¿no?
the
Entonces, estos
voluntary ones that
marcos
I have just
vinculantes, como los que
mentioned.
aquí
And
se han
therefore, these
mencionado,
binding
que todavía falta
frameworks
la
that have been
ratificación
mentioned
por parte de
that
varios
still need
países
to
que
be ratified by
importantísimo
several
para que el
countries, and that
territorio
is very
fuera de las
important
zonas
so that the
exclusivas de alta
territory
mar
outside the
también pueda ser
exclusive
utilizado para la
zones in
pesca
high
y
seas may
para
also be
otras
used
acciones de la
for
economía azul
fishing
que
or
vienen más
for other
adelante, que veremos
blue
más en
economy
profundidad,
options
de una
that we
manera
will see
ordenada y que no
later
sea
on
un
in an
territorio
orderly
venal,
fashion
¿no?
so that this
Todo
doesn't become
esto para que
no one's
esta importante
land.
actividad
And
económica
all
que
this so
genera
that
los
it's
medios de
important
vida de
that
las
economic
comunidades costeras
activity
y
that
también
creates the
actividades de la
livelihoods
economía en
for
general pueda servir
coastal communities
a
may
todos, a las
be
comunidades,
useful
a las
for everyone,
empresas,
for
a los
communities,
que
for
estamos
businesses,
interesados en la seguridad
for those of us
alimentaria
interested
a
in
través de
food
los recursos
security
marinos en los
via
países,
marine
cuidando nuestros
resources in countries,
ecosistemas para que se
um,
pueda utilizar
looking
hoy
after
y
our
también en las
ecosystem
generaciones
so that they may
futuras.
be
Eso es
used today and
importantísimo
also in
decirlo.
future generations. It's very
Entonces,
important to say that.
ahora,
Now,
cerrando un poco lo que
and
discutimos en este panel,
ending
llegó el
with what we
momento de
discussed in
pasar
this
al panel
panel, the
número
time has
2,
come for us to move on
agradeciéndole
to panel
nuevamente
2.
muchísimo a nuestros
Once again,
panelistas
thanking all
maravillosos
our
que nos
panelists, the
acompañaron,
marvelous
y
panelists
dando
that
paso
accompanied us,
entonces al panel
and
número 2.
beginning then with panel
Vamos a
number
ver un
2.
segundito, por favor. El panel
Let's see,
número
just a
2
minute. Panel number
sería
2.
moderado por
That would be
Tatiana
moderated
Pisi.
by Tatiana
Adelante, por
Pisi.
favor.
Please go ahead. Thank you, Rayen. I wanted to apologize because we've had connection problems with Adriana Romilla, who is director of the Ministry of Costa Rica, but if we're able to resolve that, she'll be joining this panel discussion later on. Panel number 2 is entitled The Transition Towards a Sustainable Blue Economy in the Context of Climate Change. And we'll talk about the analysis of ocean and marine resource-based solutions in the context of climate change, including sustainable tourism, marine renewable energy, maritime transport, sustainable financing mechanisms, and regulations to advance a blue economy in the region. Without further ado, then, I would like for us to talk about the diagnosis that we have conducted here as from ECLAC. That will be delivered by Rayen Quiroga. So, once again, you have the floor. Thank you very much. You're muted.
Gracias, Tatiana.
Thank you, Tatiana and colleagues. We would like to ask Branko to show the presentation of panel 2 that refers to a transition towards sustainable blue economy within the context of climate change. Next one, please. Next slide, please. What we want to express here is what is the global marine economy, where the main challenges exist in Latin America and the Caribbean, and in which direction we should advance for a sustainable and inclusive economy, and thus the issue of transformation. We had already said that the marine economy is extremely important and is also growing at a very fast pace at a world level. This is equivalent to 4 or 5% of the world GDP, and if it was a country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world, producing around $3 billion per year. And this is a conservative estimate, without valuing environmental services, for example, the carbon capture, for example, that was already mentioned, nor the production of oxygen and so on. The marine economy grew 2.5 times in the last 25 years, whilst the land-based economy grew 1.9 times, and the project will double its rate of growth. And therefore, the opportunities that arise with the safeguards that have already been mentioned are extremely important for food security, for the livelihoods of communities, and also for economic production and innovation. 600 million people rely on ocean economies for their livelihoods, and a large amount of goods, ocean goods and services and employments are created for livelihood and for food security. Now we will see some of the magnitudes present in Latin America. For example, we know that, well, this is, we don't have an estimation of the size of the economic values of the ocean goods and services for the economies of the region. However, it is worthwhile highlighting that in terms of employment, marine economy employs, and only talking about tourism, that among the small island developing states and Mesoamerica plus Brazil provides 4 million jobs simply in that sector. And in some Caribbean countries, marine coastal tourism represents 50% of the GDP. As mentioned by our executive secretary during his opening words, half of the surface of countries in the region is marine, a proportion that increases enormously in the Great Caribbean, representing up to 91%, and in some countries even 99% in that region. So what is very important is the importance of this economy, is the weight of this economy, and given its increase over time, there will be it will become increasingly important as an economic activity, and as a booster of sustainable development. But in order to understand what is happening in the marine economy, we must understand how climate change is impacting the region. Climate change extraction activities are enhanced because it reduces biodiversity, biomass, and marine environmental services, despite the fact that Latin America only emits 10% of greenhouse effect gas emissions. It suffers a non-symmetric impact as a result of climate change. For example, temperature increases that we know has been evidenced on the surface of seas in the region over the past 2 years. There was a record increase of ocean temperatures for 13 consecutive months, reaching its maximum point in the last the highest level in the last 65 years, as mentioned by Zoila in her presentation. And this warming of seas will continue to increase. We also evidence an acidification of the ocean when it absorbs carbon dioxide, estimating that the seas are already 30% more acidic than during the pre-industrial era. Acidification impacts biological chemical balances and trophic chains, and it impacts corals, mollusks, and ecosystems. And therefore, warming up plus the acidification of the seas leads to a severe loss of coral reefs, especially in the tropical area of the region. And in the Caribbean in 2023, more than 90% of seas in the world experienced wave heats, and a second event of the whitening of corals in the decade, and the most intensive of all those that have occurred to date, impacting 54% of coral reefs in the world, with severe consequences in the Great Caribbean, where it was estimated was a net erosion of 37% before this last major whitening event. And the impact of coral reefs reduces biomass and reduces the livelihoods of coastal fisherfolk. And therefore, as a consequence of climate change, we have the impact on the resources on marine resources in coastal areas with a more intense climatological events that impact beaches, infrastructure, and local communities and their livelihoods. In consequence, the challenges that we have faced with marine economy, we're not going to be able to outline them all, but we have already mentioned overfishing during the previous panel, contamination, and the deterioration of marine ecosystems, and all that is exacerbated as a result of the impacts of climate change, hindering the development of this sector. And in several sectors and marine territories, we have already gone beyond the limits of sustainability, reducing fishing biomass, the degradation of such as mangroves, coral reefs, beaches, marine prairies, and microalgae forests. And thus, we have placed there the main challenges for subsequent consultations. But this has to do with all these elements that we have described and that are brought together in order to question the ability of the marine economy to continue to develop and satisfy human needs looking ahead. Next one. We also find some progress, and in this sense, on the next slide, you will see some of the elements that have already been mentioned, such as the responsible management initiatives. Protected marine areas that in Latin America and the Caribbean represent around 23% of the region, nearly a quarter of the territory, with high heterogeneity between countries. And there are actions, conservation and restoration actions on biodiversity, such as the planting of corals and so on, the protection of mangroves that reaches a high level of production, 70% in the region. And these are very important ecosystems because they mitigate the impacts of storms and together with coral reefs absorb up to 90% of the impact of waves and thus protect the coastline and fishing communities. Between 2020 and 2024, voluntary instruments have made a significant headway, and the protection of residues reaching the ocean have slightly diminished from 38 to 33%, but in terms of tons, that represents 771,000 less tons that were discharged into the sea, and therefore the transformation that is needed for a blue economy, for us to build and prosper with a blue economy in this vast ocean and its marine resources in the region, what becomes urgent is to make headway with the productive modes of a sustainable blue economy that promotes the responsible use of marine resources, generates economic value with social equality, with participation, improving the livelihoods of local communities, and also improving food security and ensuring the conservation of marine ecosystems for future generations. And for this purpose, we require a structural transformation in public policies, investment patterns, technological innovation, and business and citizen awareness in order to modify present practices to advance towards more resilient and sustainable modes. And investment in conservation and marine restoration not only strengthens the protection of the natural marine heritage for its use and to continue to generate sustainable harvests, but also creates jobs and contributes to shared well-being. It is estimated that the investment in marine conservation and restoration generates between 10 and 15 jobs for each $1 million that are invested. Finally, this last slide shows the three main takeaways in order to move ahead with this transformation. The first one is a change in governance, regulation, and incentive patterns, modifying them and adapting them so that they may be built and create, build instruments and adequate incentives to promote the transition towards blue economies in the region. Secondly, a change in productive practices in traditional sectors that have already been mentioned. Fishing, sea culture, maritime transport, port services, naval construction and services, and to accelerate the development of new sectors of the blue economy, which have to be inclusive, sustainable, and participative. For example, the blue biotechnology is a new sector, and where we envisage the conservation and restoration, coastal sustainable marine tourism that is also cooperative in partnership with communities, the preparation of coastal communities faced with the impact of disasters, and the generation of offshore renewable energy, obviously wind power that is already underway, but there's many others. And maritime transport and port services based on renewable and clean energies and a more circular economy on land, because what happens on the land also impacts the seas. With this, we conclude, and we thank you for enabling us to provide some inputs for the issue of transformation towards a blue economy. Thank you, Tati.
Muchas gracias, Roger, por esta relación dialéctica entre economía marina y el cambio climático y, bueno, los desafíos vinculados a las actividades. Muy informativo y, bueno, ahora podemos pasar directamente a la mesa redonda multiactor con nuestra primera panelista, la señora Karen Collin de Verdier, experta en economía azul y agro de la Agencia Francesa para el Desarrollo. Karen, el suelo es suyo. Muchas gracias.
¿Me escuchan bien? Sí.
Sí.
Buenos días con todas y todos. Yo soy Karen Collin, trabajo en la FD como jefa de proyectos en el sector agrícola y biodiversidad para los países andinos. Soy francesa, entonces también les pido disculpas por mi español, que va a tener algunos errores en mi presentación. Primero, ¿qué es la FD y la Agencia Francesa de Desarrollo? Somos el Banco de Desarrollo del gobierno francés.
So we are the development bank.
Contribuimos a la aplicación de la política francesa en materia de desarrollo y solidaridad internacional. En primer lugar, les voy a
In the first place, we're going to
para los océanos y después les voy a presentar un ejemplo de programa Océanos en Ecuador que estamos desarrollando con Ecuador. Entonces, para los océanos, la acción de la FD más o menos se desarrolla con tres tipos de acciones.
It is developed with 3 actions.
En primer lugar, estamos promoviendo iniciativas
Again,
para la
we're looking at initiatives and the restoration.
Apoyando, por ejemplo, áreas marinas protegidas, especialmente en materia de ciencia, gobernanza.
We have license governance and sustainable development. We are also developing the impact of human activities
resiliencia del litoral,
and
al cambio climático y la mejora de
in
la
attention to
gobernanza
climate
territorial.
change. The interpreters apologize. We've had series of issues with the sound with WebEx. There is also 100% of the population of
Estamos también apoyando el sector pesquero para un aprovechamiento sostenible de los recursos pesqueros marinos y
the
continentales
fishing business
y favoreciendo
and
el
favoring
desarrollo de un sector
the
competitivo
development of the
y
competitive
inclusivo, al tiempo que se promueve la
areas.
protección de los ecosistemas. Y por fin estamos también apoyando y acompañando las políticas públicas, las instituciones y las organizaciones que promueven la buena gobernanza y la gestión sostenible de las actividades de los espacios marinos y costeros a diferentes escalas, que sean locales como nacionales o regionales.
There are places such as
Entonces, para ilustrar un poco
so
esta acción,
in order to illustrate
pensé
this
que
action,
el ejemplo de nuestro programa
the
Océanos en
example of
Ecuador
our
podría
program,
ser un buen ejemplo. Estamos trabajando sobre este
we're
programa
working
desde
on this
2016 en
program.
Ecuador. Como saben, Ecuador es
As you
un país
know, Ecuador
megadiverso,
is
en
a
particular
mega
en su
diverse
parte marina
country.
costera,
In the
en su
marine
territorio
coastal
las islas
area,
de
its
Galápagos, que son una
territory,
reserva de biodiversidad increíble. Y también
and
una gran
also
parte de su economía depende de
most of its
los
economy
recursos marinos.
relies on marine ecosystems,
Los camarones, la agricultura de camarones, por ejemplo, pero también
shrimp,
el turismo, entre otros.
aquaculture,
Y
and tourism,
una gran parte
and
del desarrollo socioeconómico
a
de
great
Ecuador
deal
está
of
en
oil
su territorio costero.
is in its
Entonces,
coastal territories,
en estos territorios.
with significant consequences in
El
these
objetivo
territories.
del programa que hemos desarrollado y
The
financiado
objective
con el
of the
gobierno de
program we have
Ecuador
developed
es para contribuir a la
is
conservación, al
in order
manejo
to
integrado y al uso
conservation
y aprovechamiento
and to
sostenible de los ecosistemas
sustainable
marinos y costeros
use of
para la
coastal marine
ejecución de una
systems
política de
for
economía
the
azul en Ecuador.
execution of
Aquí identificamos tres
economy
objetivos
policy in Ecuador.
prioritarios
We
específicos.
identified 3
El
specific
primero es sobre la gobernanza, para fortalecer la
objectives.
gobernanza
It
para una gestión
strengthens
sostenible de
governance
los recursos y
for
ecosistemas
sustainable
marino-costeros.
exploitation of
El
marine coastal
segundo
systems.
eje de
The
trabajo
second
sobre la conservación marina
working
para
about
fortalecer la
regarding
conservación, la restauración y
for
la gestión
restoration
efectiva de las zonas
and effective restoration
marino-costeras.
of the
Y
coastal
por fin,
marine
el tercer
zones.
eje
And
tiene que ver con la pesca y
it has to do
agricultura sostenible
with
para
sustainable
fomentar la
agriculture to foster
socioeconómico y
the
ambiental del sector
socioeconomic and
pesquero y
environmental
agrícola
sustainability of the
marino
system
costera en Ecuador.
in Ecuador.
Como ejemplos de
As
trabajos que estamos
an example
desarrollando
of
con
the
el
work
gobierno
that
de
we're
Ecuador,
developing,
quería mencionar, por ejemplo, estamos trabajando
for example, we're
sobre
working
la elaboración
on
de una
the
visión
preparation
integrada de los
of an
océanos,
integrated vision of
de los espacios
oceans, of
marino-costeras y la
marine
planificación
coastal
concertada
spaces,
de estos
and
espacios.
planning of these spaces.
Estamos también desarrollando
We are also
un
developing
trabajo sobre la sostenibilidad
work on
financiera de las
sustainability,
áreas
financial
marinas
sustainability of
protegidas. Como saben,
protected
ya
marine
existen
areas.
algunas
As you
iniciativas
know, there are some
para las áreas
initiatives
marinas de los Galápagos, pero sobre la
for
parte continental en Ecuador,
Galapagos and also for
el
continental
espacio
areas in
marino
Ecuador.
costero
In the coastal
continental
marine
del Ecuador,
continental
todavía
area of
faltan
Ecuador,
de
still
iniciativas de
there are some
sostenibilidad
more
financieras para
financial
mejorar también
stability initiatives to be able to
el desarrollo,
achieve
el desarrollo sostenible y la
sustainable
gestión
development
efectiva de las áreas
and effective
protegidas.
management of protected areas.
Estamos,
We are,
solamente para mencionar, por ejemplo,
just to
trabajamos
mention, for example,
también
regarding the restoration of mangroves and regarding the potential for carbon storage in these mangroves and focusing on this blue carbon for conservation. We're working on the action plan in Ecuador, among other examples. So this project, we believe it's a project that tries to see the marine coastal sector, and the economy is a development factor and that is sustainable for the country and for Ecuador. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Karen, regarding this gap between financing and this important case. To go on, we have Andrés Cisnero Montemayor. He is the Deputy Director of Nippon Foundation Ocean Nexus Program. So please go ahead, Andrés. I don't know if you'd like to turn on your camera. Thank you very much. Are we okay? Yes. Okay, thank you. We can hear you and we can see you. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's good that you organized this because presentations have been, discussion has been super interesting because of the different points of view. And as I said at the beginning, oceans are so connected that this type of discussion is great in order to have the correct perspective of other people. I know that I don't have much time. However, I am an economist. My specialty is on oceans, blue economy mostly. And precisely where we're developing our models addressing the economic part of the markets regarding climate change. And so I think the first thing that I wanted to mention, besides what we heard from blue economy, of course, there's lots of emotion or illusion about a blue economy everywhere in the world. And you can hear that everywhere, but something quite curious, I would say, is that where people are more skeptical about blue economy and what it will mean, etc., is precisely in coastal communities. It is assumed that where blue economy should help is assumed because if you live in a fisherman's town or fish farming area near the coastal area, you know that there have been different development models and lots of money is made, but rarely that kind of development helps the people who live there. So this is extremely important to remember. We all know that. Each one of us personally know it in our everyday lives, depending on the region where we live. But of course, there's lots of research that also shows that that is also happening in terms of a blue economy. Although it's true that there are many industries, or the established ones, tourism, fisheries, etc., the ones that are well established, lots of money is being made and it's growing significantly. The challenge is now to make that money to go and help the communities that need it the most. Of course, in our region, elsewhere in the world, in our region, there's a need for employment, for food in many cases, or a basic household income, which is key for any kind of development goal that we have. So what is really concerning in terms of the blue economy, as I said, is that it is about the extreme degree of consolidation in the different types of sectors. For example, we talk about fish farming. Fish farming produce the same amount of food as fisheries. I love fisheries and fishing. I love it, but in global terms, however, 50% of all fish farm production comes from China. You can fight China. It's a huge country, it's a huge population. But there you see the level of consolidation that these industries achieve in certain areas. If we talk about biodiversity or genetic material, especially for pharmaceutical use that we see today, 90% of all of the genetic patents, a couple of companies own them, and they're located in Europe, of course. Let's talk about the energy generation, wind power, also tides. Also, most of them are due to windmills. Wind turbines have a majority of the capacity is located in Northern Europe, some of it in Asia. It's basically 3 companies that own everything. Build those systems. So this is about countries. So what I would like to get to now is ensuring that the benefits really get to the people who need it in our communities, in our region, in Latin America and the Caribbean. That depends on public policies. Those benefits will not get to coastal areas just because those who own the companies, not because of out of kindness, they will want to redistribute those benefits. We need to be extremely careful to establish these companies and in terms of how we do it.
La parte que ya mencionaban varias personas, Sola y también otras,
and some other people also mentioned that. One very interesting thing that we have in our region is social action that takes place in many of the coastal communities. Artisanal fisheries, a significant part in our countries, and even somebody showed that in the map of the world how the artisanal fisheries that provides local food is extremely important in our region, more than any other. So from that local effort and communities that are in all our countries in the region is where we can use in order to ensure those other new industries can continue to establish social bonds of the same kind. So I think, in fact, we see it every single day. It's not, the problem is not how to make money out of the sea, how to grow our economy because of the sea. We know how to do it. But the problem is how to do this so that this money helps that people. And I believe then, again, in our region, social relationships we establish, the historical style and the connections that have been established, social connections everywhere, in the coastal towns, but also in the cities, is enough to create a blue economy that truly helps everyone. And we can see that some examples in all Latin America, Aruba, for example, as a country, it is also looking at how different policies of blue economy so that the whole government is involved. In Panama, they're looking at how the blue economy getting in organizing themselves with a canal.
Lugares como Cabo Pulmo en el Pacífico, que le ha tirado al ecoturismo, Siancán en el Atlántico, que es más pesca artesanal, de langosta. Va en Costa Rica, los golfos de Nicoya,
lobster fishing, Costa Rica, all this,
donde hay cooperativas pesqueras y ahora también un poco de ecoturismo.
Fishing cooperatives and some ecotourism.
Hay muchísimos ejemplos en toda la región de cómo esto puede ser para local. Solo lo que queremos hacer es, bueno, cómo hacemos para
And the idea is to see how not to replicate in the sense that this will be working for each of the areas as this is all different, but to give us ideas on how this works. We will see if this works properly or not. And if it does not work, let's look for another reason and so on. I am quite optimistic in terms of blue economy. I believe this could be something very good for the region. But I believe that the most important aspect is to have have something that's what we have right now. It is a dialogue framework of what we would like to obtain, of course, understanding that the way in which we have been working at economic level historically has not been really equitable in our region. And this is clear for the region as well. We have a number of inequalities, and I think this is a good opportunity to do things in a more equitable way, something that will be using the context and the knowledge of everybody, and something that I really liked, and I will be closing here. In the concept note, I really do not remember well, but it says something like that. We wanted to really use the science and the different activities. Of course, science is important, but science is not the only way of understanding things. These are all important aspects of what is to be integrated, to be more equitable on how we consider information, knowledge of people, their goals, their perspectives. And I think that with all this, the technical information that we have, the knowledge that we have in climate change, we will be able to anticipate what will be happening. And of course, the challenge is knowing what will be happening is how do we create a strategy that will help us move ahead and to lower the impacts as well as possible, the positive impact in a sustainable way and in an economic fashion as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andres. Very interesting perspective of an economy that is projected to $2.5 billion to make it inclusive and fair. So thank you very much. And I fully agree with really get to talk about science and knowledge. And lastly, we have Michelle Guinarocha. She is the General Coordinator of Latin American Fisheries Activities. So Michelle, you have been acknowledged, and thank you very much.
Sí, muy buenos días. Espero que me escuchen bien.
Good morning. You can hear me? Yes?
Perfecto. Antes que nada, muchísimas gracias por la invitación.
First, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It is a tremendous honor to be here as being part of the event. And again, with what Karen and Andres have been talking about this panel and everything that was mentioned by others of this area, I would like to focus on who will be putting this in practice. I can really express that for us, as we are talking about blue economy, there's a sentence that I really like, which is a transformative perspective of development. And I believe that something important in transition towards a sustainable blue economy, it is very important to place right in the middle education and diagnostics. And we need them. A new generation of leaders and professionals that have the capability of dealing with the challenges of these activities to design creative solutions, and that is be able to protect and value our ecosystems. In a transformative focus, we have to be inclusive. Gender equality is not only an aspiration or something that can be dealt with in terms of social responsibility, but it has to be a cross-sectional access in all the efforts created for this type of economy. I feel that sometimes the lack of representation in these areas of women in the decision-making processes becomes something that is not being tackled in full detail. There's very little representation in the decision-making process of women and everything related to the maritime activities of oceans and others, more fishing and others. This is a structural barrier that already exists.
un imperativo que se debe superar,
And
una
we
oportunidad
believe that
también
this
para
is something
enriquecer
that can
el
be
diálogo,
overcome, and it is
los
an opportunity to
liderazgos,
enrich
darle unas nuevas
dialogue,
miradas,
leadership, and to
saberes
provide a new
dentro del campo.
perspective of knowledge in this area.
Principal, y pienso que
I
primordialmente con las
believe
mujeres
that
jóvenes
mainly
que
with
sean
younger
empoderadas
women that are
para
fully
liderar estos
empowered
procesos
in
de
leading these
programas
processes
educativos,
of educational
acceso a capacitación,
programs, to have access to
información, los
information,
espacios de
education.
participación
Those
que
areas
puedan
of
estar realmente
participation
representadas,
can be properly
asegurarnos que
represented
las nuevas
here,
las
and we
generaciones
can
futuras de
ensure
mujeres en
that
todos los
the
sectores del
future
campo de
generations
la
of
economía
women in all
azul
of
o
the
del tema de
sectors
la
of
economía
the
marina, o
different
sea, como estaba
economies,
comentando hace
maritime
poquito
economy or blue
Zoila,
economy,
las mujeres dentro de
as
la
Zoila was
pesca, las mujeres del
mentioning,
mar, dentro de mi
women in
sector, que es el sector
fishing.
marítimo,
It is my
que
sector, the
tiene mucho
maritime
también
sector,
énfasis dentro de lo que es la
plays
conservación de
tremendous
los mares
emphasis in
desde
the
la Organización
conservation
Marítima
of
Internacional.
seas.
Y creemos entonces eso, que se vaya
And
cambiando una
we
estructura, no
believe then
solamente al
that there
modelo de
is a
economía azul,
need
sino
to
que
change
esta economía
the
azul debe estar
structure so that this blue
ahí
economy
como a la par de lo que es
can
la
be
equidad
right
y la
there
representación de las
together
mujeres
with
dentro
equality and representation of women
de esta economía.
within this economy.
Quería resaltar aquí un espacito que el año
I wanted
pasado
to
tuve
highlight
la fortuna de ser
that
invitada al
last year
encuentro del
I
Pacífico
fortunately was
comprometidos por un
invited
océano
to the
sostenible,
Pacific meeting,
donde tuve la oportunidad de
where
conocer
I
a
had the
la
opportunity
señora
to
Jacqueline
meet
González, que es
Ms.
la
Jacqueline
presidenta del
Gonzalez,
Sustainable Ocean
the
Alliance de Chile,
chairlady of
y a
the
la
Sustainable
señora
Ocean
Aurora
Alliance of
Fernández,
Chile, and Ms. Aurora
directora de la
Fernandez,
Reserva Natural
the
Pingüino Rex.
director of
Ellas me recordaron algo fundamental.
Penguins Reserve, and
El
they
liderazgo
reminded me of
transformador de
something
las
very
mujeres
important. The transformative
presente.
leadership of women is
En
always
este instante.
present,
Lo
is
que hay que hacer
here
es solamente
working.
visibilizarlo,
What we have to do is to
fortalecerlo y
visualize it, to strengthen
La
it, and
forma
to
que
replicate it.
veo que hay
The
mucha
way in which
participación de las
I
mujeres en
see that
temas
there
de
is
conservación
participation of
marítima,
women in maritime
marina,
conservation,
temas de
in
economía
topic
azul,
of
creo que
blue
debe ser un poquito
economy,
más
I
fomentado.
think this
Igualmente
has
la
to be
participación de las
promoted,
mujeres en
same
todos los
as
espacios,
participation
desde
of women
tomadoras de decisiones hasta
that
la
are
persona
decision
que
makers,
tiene
or going
muy
from
poco
decision makers to that
conocimiento
person that has very little
específicamente
knowledge,
técnico del
specifically
tema de economía
at
azul, pero
technical
que
level
participa
and
y es un
blue economy,
engranaje
but that is
clave
participating in
dentro
all these
de
areas, which becomes
todo
a
lo que
very
es
important
referente a
link
economía
of
marina.
everything that is related to marine
Asimismo, me
economy.
gustaría resaltar
And I
que
also
desde
would
la
like to
OMI,
highlight
para
that
el Día Marítimo Mundial de este
for
año,
the
2025,
World
hay un
Maritime
lema
Day
muy
2025, there's a
en
very,
torno
very
al tema de
important theme
sostenibilidad del
related
mar.
to the
El tema
sustainability of
sería nuestros
oceans,
océanos,
and it would be
nuestra
our
obligación,
oceans,
nuestra oportunidad.
our
Muy en
opportunities,
torno a la conservación
all
de
related
los
to
mares, que
conservation
son
of the
esenciales y
oceans,
primordiales
which are
para el sector
essential
marítimo y
for
la
the
conexión de
maritime sector,
economías
as
alrededor.
well as the connection of these
Para
different
finalizar,
economies.
creo
And just to
firmemente
end, I
que si
strongly believe
logramos
that
unir
if we are
enfoques
able to join
regenerativos
the
y
approach that
compromisos
is
serios por la equidad y la
regenerative
cooperación
and
regional,
with very
América
serious
Latina y el
commitment,
Caribe
Latin
pueden
America
convertirse
and the
en un modelo
Caribbean
global de
can
economía azul,
become a
sostenible,
global model of blue
inclusivo y
economy,
resiliente. Muchas
sustainable,
gracias.
inclusive, and resilient. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Michelle, muy interesante.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Very interesting. And this is related to what came from the rest of the panel, the need of involving all of the participants in not only the decision-making process, but also so the decision becomes inclusive, fair, and thank you very much for your participation. And now we are opening the floor for the different representatives of the governments and agencies that would like to participate and mention the different presentations of our experts. And then later we can close for 2 minutes per presenter, if you all agree. I do request my colleagues to help me with the raised hands as I am not able to see it here. If there are any raised hands for the different
Nada hasta el
participants,
momento.
nothing so far.
Bueno, podemos
Well, if you would like to take a couple of minutes for the closing words, Karen, maybe you can hear me.
Sí, hola, muchas gracias.
Yes, thank you.
Para cerrar, tal vez reiterar que sí, el compromiso
Maybe
de la Agencia
we
Francesa de
can
Desarrollo
again repeat that the
frente
Development Agency of France,
a proyectos y programas que permiten
when dealing with projects and programs that
asegurar
allow to
una pesca
ensure
y agricultura sostenible,
a
al mismo tiempo
sustainable
que tenemos
fishery and
programas también de
agriculture, and at the same
conservación
time
y
where we
creemos
have
que realmente
conservation programs, we
van juntos,
really believe that all this
permitir
goes together
un
for
desarrollo económico, socioeconómico,
a
con todos los
socioeconomic development
impactos
together with
sociales
all of these social
inclusivos
impacts
de
that
poder
are inclusive
asegurar
and be able to ensure
los rendimientos de la pesca artesanal,
the
muchas
yield
veces
or performance of
involucra a
artisanal
las mujeres
fishery
también,
that is always
y al
involving
mismo
different
tiempo poder trabajar
interests,
sobre
and at
la
the same time
conservación
to
de
be able to
espacios
work on the
marinos y
conservation
costeras
of the
en un
marine and
enfoque
coastal
de
environments
conservación
and
de la
the
biodiversidad, pero también de
approach
prevención y
of
mitigación de los efectos
diversity and the
del cambio
prevention
climático.
of the
En
climate
América Latina,
change
solamente
activities in Latin
como
America.
última
And
palabra, no
just
estamos solamente
as
trabajando
these
sobre
last
este
words, we're
tema
not
con
only working
Ecuador,
on this
pero
topic with
también en
Ecuador, but
Colombia.
also in
Estamos
Colombia.
trabajando sobre la
We are
restauración de
working in
manglares
the
en la costa
restoration of
pacífica
mangroves in the Pacific
colombiana, a nivel
coast
de
in
Valle del
Colombia,
Cauca, del
in Valle
departamento de
del
Valle del
Cauca.
Cauca. Estamos trabajando también
We
en
are
México
also
sobre
working in
medidas de
Mexico
pesca sostenibles
in the sustainable
para los pescadores
fishing measures for
artesanales y
artisanal
entonces también tratando
fishermen,
de
and
trabajar sobre este
also
tema con Costa Rica.
trying to
Entonces,
deal with
realmente
these topics with Costa
siguiendo
Rica.
el
So
desarrollo de la economía
dealing
azul
with
es para
development of blue
nosotros
economy for
un
us,
eje fundamental de nuestra
this
acción
becomes a
en América
fundamental
Latina. Muchas
activity
gracias.
in Latin America. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Karen. Andrés.
Gracias. Híjole, palabras de cierre.
Closing remarks.
Yo creo que lo más importante para mí en términos de la economía
The
azul para
most
recordar
important thing
es
for me is
como ya
one,
mencionaba, que
as we mentioned,
ese crecimiento económico que tenga la economía azul, o sea, las tecnologías, todo eso, no van a ayudar automáticamente a la
technologies and
gente
everything
que
are
está en
not
las
going to
costas, ¿no?
automatically
Eso lo
help
hemos visto con
people
otros tipos de desarrollo. Y entonces eso me
do
lleva a la
this.
segunda.
And
podemos hacer que ayude
that
a la
takes
gente
me
que
to
está
a
en las
second point.
costas, en todas las partes del mundo, pero sobre todo en nuestra región, que es donde
We
me
can
interesa ahorita.
help people that
Y
are
eso se puede
living
lograr
on the coast. We
entablando
can do
relaciones
this
muy de cerca
by
con la gente que está ahí.
establishing
Ha habido, por ejemplo,
close relationships
muchos
with them.
estudios que muestran
There were
que
people,
las
well, there's
ideas,
studies
digamos,
that show that
de alto nivel,
the
¿no?
high level
Entre enormes
ideas
comillas, a veces son muy diferentes. O sea, como
are
esto va a
very
ser
different.
buenísimo, esto va a ser lo que va a funcionar, cuando lo comparas con una persona que pesca, una persona que lleva turistas, o una persona que está con
Different from people who
camarones o recogiendo
work with
algas o lo que sea,
tourists
en todas
or
partes, ¿no? Entonces,
like
eso no
shrimp or
significa que
algae.
una sea
That doesn't
necesariamente mejor
mean
que la otra, ¿no?
that
Pero
one is better than the other,
significa que tenemos que
but
estar
it does mean
muy
that we
bien
need to
informados y muy bien
be
seguros de
very
lo que
well
estamos, de lo
informed
que estamos haciendo, lo que estamos abogando, verdaderamente vaya a servir a escala local. Y eso solo se puede crear con diálogo, ¿no?
because
Como
not
pero obviamente
everything
con diálogo
may
con gente que
apply
está
or
en el
work at a
área o
local
está en la
scale.
costa, por todas partes. Y bueno, creo que con eso cerraría. Creo que eso es la parte más importante. Como dije, los estudios científicos, las partes
There
técnicas,
are
todo eso se
scientific
resuelve.
studies, there's
Eso lo
technical
sabemos hacer.
aspects. All this
La
can be
parte de cómo
solved,
implementar de una manera
but
que sea equitativa,
implementing
verdaderamente,
in an
esa es la
equitable
parte que
manner,
necesitamos más colaboración. Gracias.
that is what we need collaboration with.
Muchas gracias, Andrés.
Thank you, Andrés.
Michelle, adelante.
Bueno, como cierre de mi parte, puedo decir que desde mi organización estamos
We can
siempre
say that
muy a la expectativa de lo que sería
We're
lo que es la
always
adopción de
attentive
cualquier
to
tipo de
this
convenio, cooperación que nos
notion
permita,
of collaboration,
en efecto,
cooperation
ya
that
sea
allows us
capacitar,
to
dar a conocer más de todo lo que es
know more
la economía marina.
about
Creo
the
que es muy
marine
importante
economy.
esta comentando
We feel
que todo el mundo tenga un, o sea, no se
that it's
trata
very
tampoco de
important
conectar
that
todos
we
los
all
científicos, todo lo que
contribute,
tenga
all
que ver de
collaborate.
manera técnica,
Of
sino
course, there are
esta forma
technical
en que
aspects, there
puede
are scientific
mejorarse desde sus comunidades,
aspects that
las mujeres, los
are
hombres.
valid, and we need to find a way to
Para eso
improve
estamos
the
también nosotros,
communities,
para esa
and
cooperación regional. Nosotros somos una asociación, una organización
we
que está
are an
representada en
association
19
that is
Estados miembros
represented
que conforman América Latina y estamos entonces siempre a
in
la
different
disponibilidad
ways.
para
We
cualquier
are
apoyo que
always
se requiera,
available to provide any
hablar
support
desde el tema
that may be
técnico,
necessary
de
with
algún
technical
tipo de
aspects,
capacitaciones. Así
training,
que sí, lo dejo en la mesa para cualquier
others.
persona que esté interesada en acercarse
So
a
for
nosotros.
anyone who is
Será muy
interested and would like
bienvenido
to
y
approach us,
esperamos que entonces podamos seguir
we are available
conversando a futuro.
to
Muchas gracias.
further contribute and continue our conversations.
Muchísimas gracias y
Thank you very much
los expertos de este panel,
to
muchísimas
all
gracias por
experts in the
respetarnos
panel.
los
Thank
tiempos.
you for
Gracias a ello vamos
respecting
muy
the
bien
times.
en el cronograma, así que les agradezco.
We'd like
Un
to
poco como
thank you for
para
that.
cerrar
And
con
just
las ideas
to
principales de
conclude with the main
yo creo que es muy interesante el
ideas,
trabajo transversal que está realizando la Agencia Francesa de Desarrollo en los distintos países.
the work that is being done by the French agency in the different countries.
Y me quedo también con esta idea
We're also
de Andrés sobre el
like
crecimiento
to
económico azul no significa
stay with this
automáticamente una mejor
idea
calidad de
that
vida para
Andres
las
mentioned, that
comunidades costeras
it's
y
not
que
an
dependen de los
automatic
océanos, los recursos.
way to
Entonces,
improve people's
también
lives.
generar ahí una
The idea is
coherencia,
to generate coherence
entre políticas, saberes,
between
ciencia,
policies, knowledge, science,
coherentes, informados y que
to
sean justos para la
have it
distribución,
be
¿no?
fair and coherent and
Y bueno, por
just
último,
for all.
también en sintonía con lo que menciona
And
Michelle,
also in sync with
potencial que
what
tienen, ¿no?
was
Las
mentioned
alianzas
earlier
entre
with the
distintos actores dentro de la
potential
economía azul y
different players in the green economy.
como este webinario también puede ser un espacio propicio para poder ver
This
el
could
trabajo
be
que están
a
haciendo
positive
los demás
space
y cómo poder generar sinergias,
for
¿verdad? Entre los distintos actores y
working with others and creating synergies.
muchísimas gracias a los tres.
So thank you to all three of you.
Desde acá, desde la sala.
I don't see any raised hands.
Si no me corrigen mis colegas,
So
creo
if my
que
colleagues
estamos
at
en
ECLAC
condiciones de pasar la palabra
agree,
al
we
próximo
can
panel.
now
Panel
continue
3,
with the next panel, panel 3, which will be moderated by Françoise, who is president of the French agency, and I'd like to offer the floor then to Françoise. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for giving me the floor. First, I would like to thank the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean for giving me the opportunity to chair this panel, the last one. So this panel will discuss the question of action, cooperation, and governance for a clean and healthy ocean. And it will associate in the discussion for actors for discussing evidence and dialogue on cooperation strategies on three main topics. The first, to reduce marine pollution. The second, to implement multilateral and sub-regional agreements, such as RAB Mali, ProCarib Plus, inter alia, and so on. And third, to advance initiatives for the restoration of critical ecosystem, including mangroves, coral reefs, and seagrass beds. among other strategies aimed at restoring or strengthening livelihoods and development in the countries of the region. So time is constrained, and each panelist will have 5 minutes, I guess, for answering the question, and we will group the question of the audience at the end of the session. Do I start with the first speaker? Yes? Okay.
Yes, go ahead, please, Françoise. Thank you so much.
So I am sorry not to being able to speak Spanish. Hablo un poco español, pero my language is much more fluent in English. So the first speaker will be Vidar Egilsson. Vidar, you are leading the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, the so-called IOC UNESCO, being at the same time Assistant Director General of UNESCO. And you are also steering the UN. Pardon me?
Désolé, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to go with the brief diagnosis of the region by ICLAC first.
Okay, okay.
And we will continue with Mr. Helgesson. So thank you so much, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Apologies.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Dr. Gale. I'm speaking in Spanish. Franco, ¿me puedes ayudar con la presentación? Muchas gracias. En el panel 3 vamos a hablar sobre la acción, la cooperación,
panel 3, we're going to talk about action, cooperation, and governance for a clean and healthy ocean. Next, please.
La contaminación por residuos sólidos sigue siendo una de las amenazas principales para nuestros ecosistemas marinos y costeros en la región. Como podemos ver en América Latina y el Caribe, al 2022 teníamos acumulados 1,6 millones de toneladas de basura en playas,
tons of garbage
771,000
on
toneladas
our
en
beaches
océanos.
and 100
Esta
tons in the
presión
oceans.
es
And this
especialmente alta en el Caribe,
pressure
donde a
is high
pesar de
in the
representar
Caribbean,
solo
where
el 3%
despite
de la
representing only
población
3% of
regional,
the regional
se concentra el
population, we're
21% de basura
concentrating
en océano y el
21% of
14% de basura en
garbage
playas.
in the ocean
En
and
América del Sur
31
existen
in
casos
beaches.
extremos, como
We
el caso
also
de
have
Rapa
extreme
Nui o
cases
Isla de
such as
Pascua,
Rapa
que es
Nui
una
or
isla
Easter
que no
Island.
genera grandes
This is an
volúmenes de
island that
residuos,
does not generate
que
large
tiene una
volumes of
población
residue. It has a
relativamente
population
reducida,
that is
pero que
quite
recibe una cantidad
low,
desproporcionada de
but
desechos
receives a
plásticos transportados por
disproportionate
las corrientes oceánicas.
quantity of
En sus aguas se han registrado hasta 25,000
garbage with the ocean
microplásticos
tides.
por kilómetro cuadrado,
There are
una de las concentraciones
220,000
más
tons of
altas
microplastics
documentadas en el Pacífico Sur.
that are floating, and
Siguiente, por favor.
we also see these in the South
Otro tipo de
Pacific.
contaminación son las
Another
charcas
type
de
of
pesca
contamination
abandonadas,
are
perdidas o
the
descartadas, que siguen
fishery
capturando
discards.
fauna marina
They
sin
continue
control,
to
especialmente
capture
en el Pacífico
marine
Sur,
fauna
y las
in an
corrientes marinas
uncontrolled fashion,
agravan esta
and the
acumulación en
marine
alta mar.
currents also
De igual
worsen
manera,
this
se
in the
observa un
high
aumento de
seas.
anomalías de clorofila
We
A
also
y
see
procesos
chlorophyll
de
A
eutrofización que
anomalies
están
and
alterando los
eutrophication
ecosistemas
processes that are
marinos y
altering
costeros.
the
Entre
marine
2018 y
ecosystems.
2022,
In
todas
between
las
2018 and
categorías de anomalía
2022,
A
all the
aumentaron en las
anomaly
tres
A
subregiones
categories
de América
increased in the
Latina y
3
el Caribe.
subregions of Latin America and
Sobre
the
este punto es
Caribbean,
importante destacar que el
especially
indicador no
with
distingue entre
the
fuentes
indicator that
antropogénicas y
is
naturales,
not
por lo que
responding
dicho
to
incremento puede
anthropogenic
deberse no solo a contaminación humana.
situations. It is not
En cuanto a los
merely
fertilizantes y
human
plaguicidas,
contamination.
este ha crecido
In
de
terms
forma
of
sostenida
pesticides,
en los
it
últimos
has
30
grown in a
años
sustained fashion in the
y
last 30
además
years,
el mal manejo del
and
nitrógeno
the
está generando
mismanagement of
pérdidas
nitrogen is
millonarias
also
a la región
generating
que superan los
substantial
20,000
losses
millones
for
de
the
dólares al
region,
año.
over $20 million
Por otra
a
parte, el
year.
sargazo también
On
se ha
the other hand,
convertido en una amenaza
sargassus is
creciente para las
an
comunidades costeras,
increasing threat for
especialmente
coastal
para las
communities,
comunidades del
especially for
Caribe.
the
Desde el 2011,
Caribbean
su llegada
communities.
masiva ha
Since
generado
2011, its
grandes
massive
impactos sobre la
arrival has generated
biodiversidad,
huge
el
impacts
turismo, la
on
pesca y el
biodiversity,
abastecimiento de agua.
tourism, fishing, and
Los costos anuales
water
regionales
sources,
están estimados en
and
más de
the
120
losses are
millones de
estimated in
dólares.
$120 million.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next, Next, please.
Si bien existen desafíos,
Although there are
América
challenges,
Latina y el Caribe
Latin
también está
America and the
mostrando
Caribbean are
avances,
also
especialmente
showing
en la
advances,
designación de áreas
especially in
marinas
the
protegidas.
allocation of marine
Hemos alcanzado un
protected areas. We have
23%
reached
de
23%
zonas de nuestra zona
of
económica exclusiva bajo
our
alguna
exclusive
categoría de
economic
protección.
zone under
Y esto
some
nos posiciona
category
como
of
región como,
protection,
como
and
una
this
de las áreas marinas más protegidas del mundo.
makes our region one
Tenemos
of the
casos
most protected
destacados
areas in the
como
world,
Chile y
and
Colombia que
we have
superan el
cases
40%
such as
de
Chile and
nuestras zonas
Colombia that
económicas
have
exclusivas
a
protegidas.
40% excess
Sin
of
embargo, es
the
importante mencionar que
EEZs,
este promedio
EEZs,
regional
and
esconde
this
ciertas
regional
disparidades.
average
Por ejemplo,
has certain
21 países que
disparities. For example,
cuentan con
21
litoral
countries have less
tienen
than
menos del 8% de
8%
sus
of
áreas
marine
marinas
protected
protegidas.
areas.
Y de estos 21
And of these
países,
21 countries,
14 cuentan
14
con menos del
countries
2% de
have under
protección.
2% protection.
Por otra parte, aunque
On the
se
other
observa
hand,
una alta protección de
although we
ecosistemas como los
see
manglares y
high
los marismas,
protection of
existen
ecosystems such
otros
as
que son
mangroves
igualmente
and
de importantes
others, there
que
are some that are less
están
important,
todavía
which
subrepresentados.
are still
En este contexto,
underrepresented.
las OMEC podrían ser una vía
For
complementaria
example,
para
here
ampliar esta
we
cobertura.
could
Sin embargo, es importante recalcar
contribute to
que más allá de la
conservation.
superficie
This
protegida,
is
la protección no siempre implica una
the
conservación efectiva.
issue is that conservation is
Siguiente, por
not
favor.
always
En esa
effective.
línea, uno de los grandes desafíos para nuestra
One of the
región
main
no
challenges
es solo
for
cuánto
our region
protegemos,
is not
sino qué
only
protegemos y
how
cómo lo
much we
gestionamos.
protect it, how we
Para el
protect, what we
2023,
protect, and how we protect it.
44% de nuestras áreas clave para la
By
biodiversidad marina
2023,
contaban con algún
44%
régimen de
of the key
protección,
areas
lo que
for
muestra un
marine
mayor alineamiento
biodiversity had
entre
some degree of
conservación y
protection,
prioridades
and this
ecológicas.
shows the difference
Sin
between
embargo,
protection
el
and
11,85%
systems, and
de esta superficie protegida
11.85% of
contaba
this
con algún tipo
protected
de evaluación de efectividad.
surface had some sort
Existen
of
países
effectiveness
que demuestran casos
evaluation.
exitosos, por
There are
ejemplo,
some
Brasil,
success
México y
cases, for
Costa
example,
Rica,
Brazil, Mexico, and
que
Costa
superan el
Rica
20% de sus
exceed
áreas
the
marinas protegidas y
20%
evaluadas.
of their marine
Sobre este
protected
punto,
areas as
las OMEC
evaluated.
también pueden
The
aportar
OMECs
significativamente a la
can
protección de la
also
biodiversidad. Por
contribute
ejemplo, los
to the
sitios Ramsar
protection of
marinos, que
biodiversity.
incluyen
For example, Ramsar
ecosistemas
marine
clave como
sites,
los marismas y
which
los manglares
include
que hablábamos
mangroves
anteriormente.
and
A
marshes,
nivel
as we mentioned
internacional, también
earlier.
está la estrategia de la lista verde de la
We
UICN,
also have the
que es una
green list
herramienta que
of the
nos ayuda a
UICN, a
identificar
tool that helps us
áreas protegidas
identify
que muestran
protected
resultados
areas
positivos de
that show
conservación y
positive
buena
results
gobernanza.
of
En
conservation
América
and
Latina,
governance.
solo 7 áreas marinas protegidas están incluidas
There are
en esta
only
lista.
7 marine protected
4
areas
que
are
se
included in
encuentran en
this
el
list.
Golfo de
4 are
California en
found
México,
in the Gulf of
2 que se
California
encuentran
and
en el
Mexico,
Pacífico colombiano
2 in
y
the
una que se encuentra en
Colombian
el Brasil.
Pacific, and 1 in Brazil.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next one, please.
Para poder
Now,
llevar a nuestras
in
áreas
order
protegidas
to
y hacer avanzar en términos de
go to our
evaluación, es
protected
importante
areas
un
and
marco
make
normativo
headway with the issue of
internacional.
evaluation, we
Y también es
require an
clave para una
international regulatory
gobernanza
framework, which is
marina
also
efectiva.
fundamental for an effective marine
Este cuadro
governance.
nos muestra
This chart
la participación de los países de
shows
América
the
Latina en
participation of
convenios y
Latin
protocolos
American
que
countries in
pertenecen al programa
agreements
de
and
mares
protocols
regionales.
belonging to the
Si
Regional
bien
Seas
la mayoría de
program.
los países de la
Despite the
región
fact that most
participa en al
countries in the
menos
region
uno de los
participate in at
convenios
least
del programa de
one
mares
of the
regionales,
agreements of
por
the
ejemplo,
Regional
todos
Seas
los
program,
países miembros de la
all
Convención
countries
de
that are members
Cartagena
of
han
the
firmado
Cartagena
el protocolo
Convention
de
have
derrames de
signed
petróleo.
the protocol
Sin
for
embargo,
oil
lo han
spillages.
ratificado, perdón.
They have
Sin embargo, los
ratified that.
protocolos de
However,
biodiversidad y
the
de fuentes terrestres de
biodiversity
contaminación han
and
sido ratificados
land
solo por el
contamination source
73 y el
protocols have only been
64%
ratified by 63 and
respectivamente.
64% respectively.
Por otra parte, la región
On
ha
the other
mostrado un
hand, the
liderazgo
region
en
has
el nuevo
also
acuerdo de
evidenced
alta mar, el
leadership in the
GBNJ, ya
new
que
high seas
22 países de
agreement
América
because
Latina y el
22
Caribe han
countries of
firmado
Latin
este
America
acuerdo, sin embargo, solo 7 lo han
and the
ratificado.
Caribbean have signed this agreement, but
En
only 7
paralelo,
have
ya que
ratified
estamos
it in
hablando de temas
parallel.
de
And
contaminación,
now that we're
se
talking about
encuentra en negociación
contamination
un
aspects,
tratado global
what is
sobre
presently being
contaminación
negotiated is a
plástica
global
que
treaty
podría
on
ser clave
plastic contamination that could be fundamental for the region, given its high exposure to residues received as a result of marine currents, in other words, from outside the region.
En esa línea, para avanzar hacia un
Along
océano
those
que
lines,
sea
and in
más
order to
limpio y
advance
saludable,
towards a
necesitamos de
cleaner and
acciones que
healthier
sean
ocean, we
estratégicas en
require
distintos
actions
niveles.
that are strategic
Por lo
at different
tanto, en primer lugar,
levels.
es
First of
importante
all, what is
fortalecer la
important is
evaluación
to
de la
strengthen
efectividad
the
de nuestras áreas
evaluation
marinas
of the
protegidas
effectiveness of our
y para
protected
ello
marine areas.
necesitamos
And for that purpose,
herramientas
we
y
need
estándares internacionales, por
international
ejemplo, la lista
standards
verde
and
de la
tools such
UICN.
as the
En segundo
UICN
lugar,
Green
necesitamos
List.
reducir las fuentes de
We also need to
contaminación
reduce
desde tierra
contamination sources,
y
land-based
implementando
contamination
sistemas
sources,
integrados de
implementing
monitoreo desde cuenca
integrated
hasta el
monitoring
océano,
systems from the
incorporando
basins and
también
up until
enfoques de
the
economía
oceans, and also
circular en
incorporating
sectores
circular economy
estratégicos
approaches
como
in
la pesca,
strategic
el
sectors such as
turismo y el
fishing,
transporte
tourism,
marítimo.
and maritime
También es
transport.
fundamental, como se
What
mencionaba
is also
anteriormente,
fundamental, as
apoyar
previously
la adopción de
mentioned,
un
is
tratado
to
que sea
promote the
vinculante
adoption of a
sobre la
treaty that is
contaminación
binding
plástica.
when it comes to plastic
Por
contamination.
otra parte, desde la CEPAL
And as
estamos,
from ECLAC,
promovemos el
we
fortalecimiento de
promote the
capacidades
strengthening
técnicas,
of
operativas,
technical,
políticas y
operative
prospectivas
policies and
y el
perspective
desarrollo de una
capabilities,
agenda científica
and the
regional
development
que
of a
conecte
regional
redes de
scientific agenda
monitoreo
that
y
connects
que incentive las
monitoring
alianzas
networks and that
locales,
promotes
los centros
local
tecnológicos
alliances,
y las comunidades costeras.
technological centers, and
Siguiente, por
coastal
favor.
communities.
Desde la CEPAL también
As from ECLAC,
incentivamos,
we also promote,
consideramos que la
or we
conservación
also
es
believe that
importante, el conocimiento, la
conservation is
cooperación y
important, and
el
knowledge,
derecho
cooperation,
internacional
and
son
the
pilares
international law are
interdependientes
all
que
interdependent
son
pillars
necesarios para una gestión
that are
sostenible del
required
océano,
for a
pero
sustainable
que requieren no
management of
solo de acciones
oceans,
locales,
but that requires
sino
not only
también
local
requieren de una
actions,
comprensión
but
profunda
also
de los
a
procesos
profound
oceánicos a nivel
understanding of
global
ocean processes
y
at a
de que las
global level,
amenazas del
and
océano
that
son compartidas.
ocean
Por
threats
lo tanto,
are
el
shared,
conocimiento
and
tanto
thus
científico como técnico y
scientific,
tradicional
technical, and
son claves
traditional
para tomar
knowledge
decisiones que
is
sean
fundamental in
informadas,
order
que
to
sean
make
adaptativas
informed
y que sean
decisions that are
inclusivas.
adaptative and
Y por otra
inclusive.
parte, es fundamental hacer
On the other
hincapié
hand, what
en
is
que el
also
océano
fundamental
es un bien
is to
común
highlight that the
transfronterizo
ocean is a
y que ningún
trans-border
Estado
common
puede
good, and
protegerlo
that no
eficazmente
state
si
can
actuamos en
protect them
solitario. En
effectively
esa línea,
acting
la CEPAL propone
alone.
avanzar
And in that
hacia una
sense,
gobernanza
ECLAC suggests that we
que
must
sea más
move towards a
consolidada,
governance that is
que
much more
tenga una mayor
consolidated,
cooperación internacional,
involving
que
greater
tenga mayor
international cooperation
participación activa y efectiva
with
de todos los actores
effective and
locales y
active
que tenga
participation of all
principios de
local
equidad.
stakeholders, and
Muchas
also
gracias.
involving equality principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this interesting landscape of what we would have to look at and to consider. So I come back perhaps to the first speaker to react to this synthesis. So Vidar, I told that you were at the head of the so-called IOC UNESCO, but you had a lot of other positions before in Norway, in the government, as well as in the Nobel Foundation in Sweden. And also thank you for having adjusted your travel plans to be there this evening. And so when you consider the different aspect and initiative of ECLAC, which type of cooperation of the IOC UNESCO you will put as a priority, and what is lacking today for improving some cooperation on some topics?
Mr. Helgeson, can hear you, Dr. Gale, but we are having some issues with his audio and his connection. So I apologize, and I ask you if you can introduce first Ms. Alexandra Fischer and Mr. Nelson Vasquez until we wait to solve the problem with Vidal Helgeson.
Okay.
So thank you so much. If you can start with Alexandra.
Okay, perhaps I know that Nayat Sanchez also has another meeting, so perhaps it was told that perhaps we can start with her, if you agree.
Yes, but the thing is, Nayat is is running a little bit late. Also, actually, we are running a little bit early. That is the thing. So
okay,
so we're running early. So I really apologize for this change, Dr. Gale, but if you could start with Ms. Fisher, it would be better. Yes.
Okay, good.
So much.
So, Alexandra Fisher, I hope that you are there.
A ver, Alexandra, ojalá estés por ahí.
Ecosystem and biodiversity, as you are senior technical
El ecosistema y la biodiversidad es importante para ti porque tú eres una asesora senior, asesora técnica senior.
You're in mute, Dr. Gale. We can't hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes, now we do perfectly.
Okay, okay. So, Alexandra, you know well the evolution of the regional landscape and its priority, considering your position. What will be, in your opinion, the most urgent question we would have to solve to be efficient relative to our topic, the ocean governance, for example?
Alexandra, ¿puedes abrir el micrófono y la cámara, por favor?
Alexandra, please unmute your microphone and switch your camera on.
Alexandra Fisher, no sé si nos escuchas. I don't know if you can hear us. Por favor.
Alexandra Fisher, can you hear us? Can you see us?
Well, we learned with this that we can't rely on technology, right? Okay, we can continue if you agree, Dr. Gale, with Nelson Vasquez.
Yes, okay. So, dear Nelson Vasquez Ferro, you are professor at the Department of Marine Biology at the University Católico del Norte in Chile. And you are also the founder and director of the Participatory Science Program, Científicos de la Basura, with 25 years of experience in environmental education, science education, and participatory science projects. And I would like to ask you in which way citizen science may act today in strengthening the production of dissemination of ocean science to support informed decision-making, and also in which way developing what the Ocean Decade has called ocean literacy would be different at a local and regional scale. Thank you for trying to answer to these questions.
I can. Yeah.
It's to you, Nelson.
Okay. I can share my presentation or?
Yes, go on, because we are late, so we have sometimes considering the fact that they will arrive later. Do you want?
Well, I can speak in Spanish.
Colegas de TIC, ¿podrán habilitar para que Nelson comparta su presentación?
Para poder compartir.
Excelente, muchísimas gracias.
Nelson, así que puedes hablar en español.
Puedes hablar en español, no hay problema.
Yes, Nelson, you can speak Spanish, no problem.
Yeah, you can you see my presentation now?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Well, bueno, el programa de ciencia ciudadana
the citizen science program called Científicos de la Basura is a program that was created in 2007. And what we seek is the participation of communities, working initially with school communities and subsequently with a group of volunteers and public officials from different institutions, such as marine parks, for example, whom we invited to participate in research linked to the issue of rubbish on beaches and in marine environments in general. And therefore, what we do is to collect first-hand information. Our objectives are, on the one hand, to strengthen the development and the creation of environmental awareness among people, because it has a strong environmental education component on the issue of rubbish on beaches. The second objective is to bring people closer to science, and especially to the scientific method, so that they know how it works, and thus how to obtain information about this aspect. A third objective is that this information may be published both in research journals or in papers or in various media where people can easily gain access to. And a fourth objective of the program is that this information may be able to reach the largest number of people possible and also reach decision makers, so that they may, in consequence, produce laws enabling the solution of this problem. What this scheme shows is that this is a scheme of our own program of citizen science, where we see a problem in the environment. Scientists invite people to participate in the collection of information, and for this we create educational material and training sessions. And after we obtain the information, scientists share this information in congresses or scientific articles, and people can share this in their social media, thus reaching people and decision makers in order to resolve this problem. The program was created in 2007, and as from 2018, we have extended it to another 11 Latin American countries with whom we share the Pacific Ocean, between Chile and Mexico, where we work with 40 schools, 60 associated teachers, more than 700 school children every year, and approximately 400 volunteers.
This has meant that in Chile, for example, we have objective data and standardized data since 2008, with sampling that has taken place every 4 years, to get to know what cities in Chile most of the garbage is found on beaches. So this is a result of last year's campaign. Fortunately, you can see here there are some regions with significant amounts of garbage, and it has been reduced. And the explanation, maybe we could hypothesize about it, because the idea is also for people to get engaged by setting hypotheses based on these results. The same thing we've been doing in Latin America. This is the first international sample we took in 2021, where we knew what were the countries that had macro garbage quantities on their beaches, and the same thing we can know in terms of the type of garbage that is mostly present in beaches in Latin America. By and large, you see that this color represents plastic, that is traditionally the garbage item with the largest presence, followed by cigarette butts. Since 2007, then we've been working on this. asking people to collect information. But as of last year, we wanted to leap forward so that scientific data is not only about science, which so that school kids and volunteers can know it and work with it, but based on that, so they can help us create solutions. And this is how last year in Latin America, 50 different local actions in 10 countries took place with 800 people involved. And this is based on the analysis of results in each location, the people, and according to their local reality, submitted ideas and they applied in order to mitigate this environmental problem in their communities. From Chile, we cannot tell them what they need to do because each location is different. Idiosyncrasies are different, and we respect that so that they can actually make their own decisions. The main activities, scientific talks were organized or talks to the community. Some groups also did some cleaning. Signage was also installed. Ashtrays for cigarette butts were installed, and also with some information on the signage regarding the type of material that they could find in the garbage. Lessons learned in all this time. We believe we need to continue to do this, and we have to work in the simplest way possible to make it fun, because one of the issues about citizens science or participatory science is to keep people involved and engaged, ongoing engagement, and not to lose that group of people that are already working, and to keep them and to achieve engagement in those people. That's how we usually call it. Listening to people, talking to people. We're far, but we've been able to be closer to them, and also personally and online to listen to them and to find out what's going on. We should not forget that this is a program that is helping science. We need to be clear about the questions, and data must be validated when we receive information from citizens. The data need to be checked and validated for them to be objective and real. And we should never forget about sharing the science with other people. This is the way we work. We have done lots of research in this time. And we always keep this idea of working with people, respecting their idiosyncrasy. We support them remotely. We provide them with material, but they are the ones who collect information. And an important aspect of this is that we're not saying whether polluting is right or wrong. We let people to assess that by seeing their own results from the information they collected in the field. And with that, closing, this is part of the work team of which I'm part. We are a team. This is an ongoing effort to support people, to support our volunteers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nelson, and very interesting, and the powerful that you have in such action and in such networking. So thank you very much. Perhaps I will have a question about that, is the following. It is very important today to have data about plastic pollution, for example, or other type of pollution, but plastic is well identified. But one of the questions we have at the very global level is what are the unit, what are the type of measuring that we will have to adopt for trying to have a cooperation at the global ocean level. Do you have an idea?
Yeah. Yo creo que nosotros lo que tenemos que hacer para hacerlo este programa
what we need to do to make these types of programs more global
es mantener
is to
el respeto hacia el trabajo de las
respecting
localidades
the
y de las
work
personas.
of the communities
Sabemos
in these
que
locations,
muchas
the
veces
work of
trabajar
the
con la
people.
temática de la
We know
basura
that
no
many
es lo
times
más atractivo.
working
Estos grupos
on
de
this topic
escolares
of
podrían
garbage is not really
perfectamente estar
attractive.
estudiando la
School kids
biodiversidad de
would probably
invertebrados, por
rather
ejemplo, que
be
habitan en las
researching about
playas.
invertebrates biodiversity,
Pero tenemos que hacer
but we need
que
to
eso converse también con la
make that
realidad que
talk
efectivamente
to
existe.
the reality that also exists.
Quisiéramos trabajar en lo otro, en
We
aspectos
wish we could
quizás,
work
entre
on
comillas,
the other
más
aspects,
bonitos
in the
que ocurren en la
the
playa.
fancier aspects of things that happen
Cuando
on a
nosotros
beach.
iniciamos el
When
programa
we started
pensábamos que íbamos
the
a
work,
durar
we
poco
thought we were
tiempo,
going to
que el
last
problema se iba a
for a very
solucionar
short time, and the problem
en el corto
would be
plazo, y
solved in the short term.
lamentablemente llevamos
But
18 años
unfortunately, we've been at this
trabajando y
18
la
years,
situación en algunos
working, and the
casos ha
situation
mejorado,
in
en
some
otros
cases has
casos ha
improved,
empeorado.
but in other cases
Creo
has
que es
worsened.
importante mantenerlo
We
y se
believe
puede
that
hacer
it is
global
important to keep it,
precisamente
and
porque el
this can be
problema es
made
global,
global because the
porque
problem is
afecta a
global
todas las
precisely
personas
because
y
it
porque todas las
impacts
personas al
everyone,
mismo tiempo
and
somos capaces de buscar
all the
soluciones.
people are able to
Tenemos que dar un
look
mensaje
for solutions.
también
So we need
de
to send
esperanza en
a
que
message of hope as well.
esto, al involucrarnos y al
By
saber lo que está pasando,
becoming
podemos
engaged in
comunicarlo,
knowing what
podemos
happens, we
comunicarlo
can
cada vez a
communicate
más
it, and we can
personas.
communicate it to more and more people.
Y la idea, claro, es
And
involucrarse
the
en
idea,
este
of course,
tema,
is
ojalá sea
to
no para
engaging about this
seguir
about this.
estudiándolo y viendo cómo aumenta,
It's not
sino que
just to
ojalá para
continue to research
conversarlo en
and
algún
see how it
momento y
grows,
mirar
but
hacia el
at some
pasado y
point
decir,
look back
mira
into
cómo
the
era
past and
antes
see, you know
y
what,
mira qué
this
bien
was
estamos
this
ahora.
is the way it was, and look at how much better we're now.
Pensaría algo en esa dirección para
I think that would be
involucrar a más
my
personas.
comment in order to engage more people.
Hay cosas que se pueden hacer y hay
There are
soluciones que se
things that
pueden
we can
lograr.
do, and there are solutions that can be provided as well.
Y como no se hace nada malo,
And since
hacemos cosas buenas,
we're
debemos
doing
impulsar, seguir haciendo ese tipo de cosas.
the right thing, I guess, and we need to keep driving those right things that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Nelson. I have another question, which is you have shown that the action you have are on the Pacific face. Are you trying to do the same, similar things on the Atlantic one?
Ya, nosotros hicimos el año 2022
Yes, in 2022, we conducted some research about marine invertebrates that are located on top of the garbage on the beaches. Let's say a plastic bottle, since it can float on the water, and marine currents take that garbage everywhere. During that period, during that time, marine invertebrates become entangled in this garbage, and we did a study in both oceans, Atlantic and Pacific, to get to know the organisms that were involved in that. That has been I believe, the only type of research that we have conducted to the Atlantic.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Perhaps other people have some questions, or I give the...
Dr. Gale, we already have on board Alexandra and Vidar, that they are already enabled as panelists.
They are there? Vidar is there? Okay.
Yes.
So perhaps I can start with Vidar. And so Vidar, I am sorry, I present you before you were not there, but I would like to ask you a question about the different initiatives that the ECLAC has developed and the way in which you will approach a cooperation between the IOC, UNESCO, and ECLAC for having to improve the ocean governance, for example.
Thank you very much, Françoise. I think the starting point to that question is that historically we've had surprisingly little collaboration between the Environmental Oceanographic Commission and ECLAC, as well as with other regional economic commissions. I think that is about to change and should change because with the increased awareness of the importance of the ocean, both for the planet and for national economies, and with the increased attention politically on the ocean, with all the changes taking place in the ocean and the corresponding need for action based on knowledge, based on data, we have a lot in common. The IOC is the home to the Global Ocean Observing System. We have the Ocean Data Information System, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. And as such, we're a provider of knowledge and data. The economic commissions, not least ECLAC, is strongly data-driven, has a mandate pertaining to economic and social affairs, but also ecological affairs. And we can't treat the ocean as one or the other. The ocean is an ecosystem or a set of ecosystems. Industrial activities are impacted by and are impacting the ecosystems. So we need to look at these things holistically and bring relevant knowledge to decision makers. And I think the economic commissions and ECLAC really in a strong league there is a great basis for dialogue between member states and for more informed basis for action. We are now working with ECLAC within an ocean coordination mechanism for the Caribbean and the North Brazilian basin for improving ocean governance there. I think that's the first formal structure for a collaboration, and I hope there's going to be more of that.
Okay. Thank you. I have another question. Perhaps I can, if we have time, I hope that we have time. I can ask also another question about an international platform for ocean sustainability, the so-called IPOS. Do you think that such a structure associated with you and may accelerate such implementation of regional action to reach a clean and healthy ocean in general or in particular? In the area?
I think, yes, the IPOS initiative speaks to much of what I was talking about in terms of providing data and science and knowledge as a basis for decision making. And the science policy interface is complicated and difficult, but there's all the more reason to act on it. And ECLAC is a great platform, I think, in Latin America and the Caribbean to hold such dialogues and organize processes on which we can ensure that decision-making has a good and solid knowledge basis. You can never guarantee that decisions are ultimately taken on the basis of science, on the basis of knowledge, but what we can do and should do is to ensure that the best available knowledge is made available and made available in a form that is understandable not only to the decision makers and their bureaucrats, but also to people, so that you can explain why is it that we need to do this with the ocean and shouldn't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Helgelsen. I think that we are late, perhaps, because I heard, no, we are not. Okay, so thank you very much. So I do not know what was the noise that I received, but it means something, perhaps. So thank you, Vidar, and perhaps Nayat Sanchez-Pai, you will be there, are you? Yes.
Dr. Gale, Nayat is coming late, but Alexandra is already here.
Okay, so Alexandra, so I'm so glad that Alexandra, you are here. So Alexandra Fischer, you are concerned with bioecosystem and biodiversity as you are senior technical advisor with the United Nations Development Program Environment and Energy team in the area of Latin America and the Caribbean And so you know everything, perhaps today. But what is your opinion and about the most urgent question that you would like to see to solve today and tomorrow relative to our topic?
Thank you so much, Françoise. Maybe I can speak a little bit about what we're doing with the ProCaribe project, if I may.
Yes, sure.
I'm not sure if we can show the few slides. Is that possible or no?
We can take 2 slides if you have 2 slides.
Okay. Do I press share here, or do you have? I had sent it to you.
So I do not know how it works.
Share, it's fine.
Share. Okay. Great. Do you see the presentation? Can you confirm that you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh. Okay, it's just loading.
If it's not coming, I can.
You can do it. Yeah, I don't think it's coming from my end. If you can share, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps you can
Perhaps I can get started while
Marcia
get perfect. Great. So yeah, I wanted to present a little bit about ProCaribe because this is the initiative that this is a regional initiative that we're supporting from UNDP's end, and I thought this would be very interesting for panel participants. So this ProCaribe project is an ambitious joint initiative that is funded by the Global Environment Facility, and it's implemented by UNDP and executed by UNOPS. It's a $15 million initiative involving 18 states in the region at this point. And its objective is basically to protect and restore the ocean's natural capital by strengthening the resilience of our marine and coastal ecosystems and supporting regional investments. It builds on 2 previous GEF investments that many of you might be familiar with, which are the CLME and CLME Plus projects, which led to the development of a strategic action program for the entire Caribbean large marine ecosystem and for the North Brazil Shelf large marine ecosystem. So I'm bringing this example because I think it's really does speak to your question about what is most urgent. I think we really do need regional collaboration because this is all these problems of pollution and habitat degradation don't know any borders. So we really need to facilitate initiatives that involve many countries working together. So this ProCaribe Plus is not only supporting now the implementation of the strategic action program that had been developed previously, but also is leading on the process of developing a new strategic action program now for the coming 10 years. And this program is being implemented from 2023 to 2028 over a 5-year period. And it basically involves 4 main thematic components, if we can go back to the previous slide. So these involve, as I mentioned, the regional collaboration work, which involves implementing action programs and strengthening regional ocean governance. It also involves national enabling conditions to build up that national capacity and strengthen those national commitments on ocean-related issues. And then there's action by all sectors of society, and this is involving catalyzing action through small grants, blue carbon credits, marine spatial planning, and improved fisheries practices and traceability. And finally, the last component is based on knowledge management and exchange. And one of the objectives is to develop a regional marine data, information, and knowledge management information and sharing system. So it's a very ambitious program, and all of these 4 components integrate youth, gender, safeguards, and climate considerations in all the project activities. Now, next slide, please. I won't have time to go into the details, but I just wanted to mention that one of the key achievements of the project has been this recent establishment of an ocean coordination mechanism on marine issues. And this has so far been signed by 18 states and 9 intergovernmental organizations that have ocean-related mandates. And this OCM, as we know it, is basically working on, it's providing a technical and policy platform for processes like transboundary diagnostic analyses, as well as supporting the state of the marine environment and associated economies report. It's also coordinating sustainable financing plans and promoting institutional and regulatory alignment. So these are the main objectives of this ocean coordination mechanism. Last slide, please. And finally, as I was mentioning, beyond the governance support of the ProCaribe project, it's also supporting concrete local actions on the ground to achieve tangible impacts, and that's through small grants projects, empowering coastal communities to tackle marine pollution and habitat degradation. So I've just provided a few examples here just to give you a flavor of the type of support that is being provided. So for example, in Antigua and Barbuda, there's an ocean trust dive cleanup project that's currently being funded to remove waste from coastal ecosystems, restore critical habitats, and raise community awareness. And in St. Lucia, the Waterways Project is working with local communities to restore the river system, tackling pollution at its source, and really promoting an integrated ridge to reef approach. And the last example I wanted to provide is in St. Kitts and Nevis, where ProCaribe is exploring ways for innovative coral restoration to enhance reef recovery. So that's working to maintain food security, but also working very much to promote sustainable local fishery practices through capacity building and training. And this project is also conducting a Reef Check Eco-Diver training certification course and an intensive reef survey. So this is the type of local action that the program is providing. And so really, in summary, ProCaribe is working at different levels, combining the regional governance with national capacity building, local action, and knowledge management. And we think that this comprehensive approach is really recognizes that healthy oceans require both the regional cooperation and community empowerment. So on the bottom of that last slide, I've included the link to ProCaribe for those who would like to get more information, or you can certainly feel free to contact me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very efficient talk and very clear. I think that one of my questions perhaps will be dedicated to the data that you obtain after all these projects. What are you doing with those data?
Yeah, I should preface my answer with saying that the person who's directly involved in this project unfortunately wasn't able to attend today. And so I don't have all the details. Unfortunately, he's in the steering group of the Ocean Cooperation Mechanism, which happens to be taking place today. So I know the data is being used so that there's a shared understanding of the transboundary problems and to inform the strategic action programs and all the elements of each strategic action program. So it's very much data with a purpose in order to inform the actions that each nation will take and the cross-border cooperation that will be taken, and to have a system at the end of the day that has this information available and available to be disseminated. But if you'd like more details, I can certainly obtain those for you.
Thank you very much. Do we have other question in the audience? No? So perhaps if there is no more questions about that, perhaps we can look at the last speaker.
Mrs. Nayat Sanchez hasn't arrived yet. She had warned us that she will come late, and we started earlier. We're not sure if she will be able to connect, but
I think she just wrote that she's here. I saw somebody in the chat, Nayat, right, that she's here. So
she's here. And do you know how she can connect with us?
Let me see the messages.
Can you hear
Hello?
me? Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So you are Nayat.
I'm Nayat.
Okay, so Nayat, thank you for being there. I just present you in 2 words because we were very glad to see you and to listen to you. So you are the director of the INRIA Research Center in Chile? and you have received a lot of awards. You have created the RIO group, and you actively participate in shaping the future of AI on a global scale, and being a member of expert groups with influential organizations such as UNESCO and the World Economic Forum, contributing with your expertise on ethical and responsible AI, and also in governance also. So do you have some slides, or do you want to present what you are doing?
No, I don't have slides, in fact. You
Okay.
request me to not have slides, so I didn't bring slides for...
Okay, so I can present some question at the very beginning. So, excuse me, I have some... Excuse me. Hello?
Yes.
So you are concerned with this approach, which is now very useful for a lot of things. Sorry, I have some. It's me. We have. Bon. Excuse me, for some minutes. So it's me. So in which way do you think that what you know well is the artificial intelligence? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Maybe if you mute your mic, I can go directly to my speech.
Yes, go on, please, because I have
probably
difficulties.
If you mute your mic, I can start. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and again, my apologizes for being late to this fantastic panel. Thank you so much to the organizers and for the invitations, and thank you so much for the clarifications and everything. I mean, in the scope of this Blue Talk, I think it's important for us as a French National Institute in Digital Sciences and Technology based in Chile since 13 years now, and working in the convergence of AI and also climate sciences and also the oceans. I think it's important to address some of the topics that you have been discussing here. So with respect to the roles of, you request a little bit that I expand on the sense that what is the role of AI tools that can play in terms of the cooperation and the governance process in the regions and so on. So, and for that, I think it is important that to say that AI can serve as a sort of lingua franca for cooperation, okay, and governance, but because it allows a database or fact-based dialogue between different disciplines, right? And in particular, the AI models can also serve to aggregate in a way or consolidate dispersed or limited data in order to make the actionable decisions that take into account the diversity in the region. And this is, I would say, and later I would say an example on a particular project that we are working on that and contributing to that. And another thing is to say that AI is also critical for understanding complex ecosystems, because it allows us also to understand the causal relationships between the different organisms. For example, using AI, we can discover what are the key species that should be preserved in order to ensure the sustainability of an ecosystem. One interesting example that we always put into front is the example of whales. Okay, I mean, we all love whales, and of course they are beautiful, they are smart, but they have also a key role in ecosystems as they feed in bigger depth and they go into the surface to rest, and they are, I mean, doing number 1 and number 2, and therefore return nutrients to the surface, allowing the growing of algae. And this is critical for the functioning of the ecosystem, and it's critical also for the dynamic of the functioning of the ecosystem. And I can say also that AI is critical for discovering the relationships between this, because it is able to extract knowledge and from the data, and even if this knowledge is framed in a very fundamental signal. And I want just to mention in this respect a project, and I want to do just to recalibrate I mean my speech and address your question specifically concerning what could be the approach of the AI in this respect in the region, by putting into front a project that we have that is it's called Oceania project, that is led, but INRIA Chile is in fact a Franco-Chilean project. We have a consortium of more than 30 researchers and also students and so on, and positioning myself as an AI researcher working on the intersection of the AI and climate change, and now specifically leading the project Oceania. I think it's important to put into front I mean all of this, because I mean there are a lot of critical issues that we tackle in the framework of this project, right? I mean, the project Ocean AI focus on the artificial intelligence and modeling for understanding oceans and climate change within the Chilean context, but also in the global context.
No solamente pensando en el contexto chileno, sino también en el mundial. Hay distintas colaboraciones que se pueden hacer y donde puede contribuir la inteligencia artificial. Ahora, específicamente en términos del rol de la cooperación, dado que este proyecto es de investigación, los impactos y la cooperación y la gobernanza se darán. Es por eso que estamos desarrollando herramientas específicas que pueden lidiar no solo a la gobernanza, sino también a la toma de decisiones en materia de políticas. Es por eso que estamos desarrollando modelos de inteligencia artificial base, otras herramientas que permiten dirigirnos al impacto en zonas marinas y también puede servir para apoyar la toma de decisiones a futuro, incluso para las ONGs y comunidades locales. El objetivo finalmente es de abrir la investigación con estas herramientas de fuente abierta. Eso es lo primero. Lo segundo es que al proporcionar
through this, the objectives and the specific objectives of the project, scientific evidence for policy, right? So the research that we have been conducting inside the Ocean AI project can generate crucial evidence and scientific evidence about the impact of climate change through the marine ecosystem, right?
Para los
the changes
ecosistemas.
in ocean currents, the acidification effects of shellfish, the impacts on fisheries, for example.
Y, por ejemplo,
And we are
que
building
pueden tener las pesqueras y estamos generando un análisis, un modelamiento que puede proporcionar a los creadores de políticas con información.
And we are working a lot on facilitating
Estamos trabajando además en facilitar el que se pueden compartir datos, es vital para
not also is focusing on developing platforms and concrete tools for visualizing complex
generar plataformas con herramientas específicas y que se usen de manera accesible, pero también de una forma que conecte todas estas preguntas que vienen de áreas interdisciplinarias, de modo de contribuir a la creación de políticas. Al final, este proyecto generado por INRIA en Francia
React Challenge es el nombre de la herramienta. Hemos involucrado a distintos equipos INRIA de Francia, pero también a otros participantes como SENAGES, y en el caso de Chile también es un proyecto a nivel mundial y
research institution in Chile, like University of Chile and Catholic University of Chile.
Por supuesto, la Universidad de Chile, la Universidad Católica y otros institutos de Chile.
The tools, the frameworks, the scientific evidence, but also we're trying
también
to
hay
build
evidencia
an interdisciplinary
científica.
research network. And this is very important because this is again a research project, but
Donde nuevamente vemos un proyecto de investigación que promueve la cooperación, pero lo que queremos es no solo promover cooperación entre las comunidades de la inteligencia artificial, sino también en comunicación con la biología marina, los científicos, etcétera. Así que es una colaboración interdisciplinaria que va a permitir tener soluciones holísticas para todos.
And this is for, I don't know how am I going with the time.
No sé cómo voy con el tiempo.
Okay. Can I continue? If not, I can stop here.
Si no, puedo parar acá.
Hello?
Dr. Gale, you're muted, sorry.
Okay. So I think that I am not sure that we are
No
on
estoy
time.
segura de cómo vamos con el tiempo.
We have time. So go on, please.
Everyone can have another little round if you want.
Okay, great. So just quickly, just to address another point,
Rápidamente y solo
that is
para
important
abordar
in the role
otro
of
punto,
AI,
es
with
importante
respect to the
el rol
restoration of the critical ecosystems. And how are we tackling this in the framework of the Ocean AI project scope? Because at the end, what we are doing, as I already said, is
Es
to build
importante
these
ver el alcance. Como decía, lo que estamos tratando de hacer es tener plataformas y tener herramientas específicas para mejorar el monitoreo, perdón, y así poder avanzar. Tenemos estas herramientas, tenemos inteligencia artificial y usamos datos.
Satellite imagery data, but also on the water sensoring data.
Pero
I mean, which in the project may contribute
sensores y mediciones de agua para utilizarlos
and also an efficient assessment on the health of the extent
y realizar una evaluación específica del sistema, como por ejemplo el lecho marino, los corales, y hay que
and this is something that again they are a science-based tool
analizarlo todo, utilizar herramientas científicas y por supuesto también según la calidad y la disponibilidad de los datos, pero
database that is very quality database
en cuanto a la calidad de las bases de datos, de distintas fuentes de datos satelitales y otros datos que han sido recabados en todos esos años, sobre todo distintas expediciones
And this is for
en todo el mundo.
This is for improving monitoring and the health assessment of the ecosystem, right?
Estamos mejorando entonces la salud del ecosistema, pero
dynamics and to model restoration scenarios. And this is very
lo importante es poder modelar estos escenarios de restauración. Es importante porque este modelamiento numérico es un aspecto clave en el proyecto Oceanía y con este podemos simular la dinámica del ecosistema y poder predecir algunos resultados. Por ejemplo, si aumentamos la temperatura, ¿cómo podría esto mejorar la situación del ecosistema y buscar alguna estrategia? Estamos trabajando con
tools that can
con herramientas que
and can contribute to the governance
puedan contribuir con la gobernanza
and finally, last but not least, I have
de estos
another
ecosistemas.
example
Y finalmente, y no menos importante, tengo otro ejemplo que es el de monitorear los ecosistemas, pero tiene que ver con la forma en que analizamos los datos para proteger
all the
y
threats of the
monitorear
ecosystem. By threats, I mean the
los
pollution
hilos,
events,
quiero decir con los
how we
hilos
have invasive
como
species, the
eventos
impacts of the
de
agriculture, for example, and this is
contaminación,
something very
problemas de
critical in
con las
Chile, and
especies
the early detection of
y
all
la
of this
detección
can
temprana de
enable then
todo
the
esto
timely
que
interventions to protect and also to restore
permita
all of
realizar
these
intervenciones para
environments.
proteger
So
y
we are
restaurar
completely
estos
on that,
ambientes.
and the
Eso es lo
good
que
news
estamos
is
haciendo
that at the end
y
what we are doing is using
al
the AI
final
for a common good,
estamos
right?
utilizando
For a common purpose, and this is really important because it's already
todas estas
really
herramientas
at
de
the
inteligencia
core mission
artificial
of
por el
what
bien
we
común
do,
y eso
not
es lo que
only
está
in
al
Chile,
centro
but
de lo que hacemos no solo en
also
Chile,
in France.
sino
And this
también
project is
en Francia.
an
Este
example, very
proyecto
good example on that.
es un muy buen ejemplo de eso.
Thank you so much. I will stop here and we'll let for questions if we have time.
Vamos a parar acá y bueno, tomaré encantada preguntas si las tuvieran y si hay tiempo. Doctora Gale nuevamente está con mute.
Sorry. Thank you so
Mis
much for
disculpas.
this,
Muchas gracias.
this information, and also you give us the taste of what is AI. A question about digital twin. Are you working with this in your horizon, or what are the?
Is this a question for me?
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yes, so when you present us the different aspects that you are thinking of or you are working on, we see that there is a diversity of space where AI will be very powerful for solving questions and for helping us to modelize, to evaluate a lot of things. I was thinking about the digital twin for the ocean, which were discussed and which will be discussed, I think, at the UNOX 3. What is your position about that?
I mean, this is a great and complex idea and challenge, I would say, because building the digital twin of the ocean, I mean, we can imagine creating a highly detailed dynamic, because the complexity of the ocean is that it's dynamic, it's moving, right? And also an interactive virtual replica of the ocean. In fact, we have been working in the past with, I would say, a small digital twin of replica of what a simulator at the end of what is happening, for example, when a tsunami comes to the coast. And this is really very difficult problem, because it encompasses not only physical issues, but also chemical, biological, even socioeconomic dimensions that you need to put into all of this model. And this is just a static model. It's a living thing, right? That is breathing, I mean, with the days and the counterparts, and it's near real time by continuously ingesting a vast amounts of data of the ocean. We need to, I mean, it's important that we know that we know less of the ocean than the universe, right? So this is critical, right? So there are key components here. If we're thinking on, I don't know if this will be addressed or was already addressed in the panel, but there are critical components with respect to the digital twins of the ocean that has to do, first of all, with the data, but the data integrations, I mean, there are foundations on that with respect to how do you assimilate all of these diverse data sets from different sources and how you fuse all of this information from all of these sensors and those type of sensor, right? The other thing is the advanced modeling, right? There are sophisticated numerical models and that has to do, that includes the ocean physics, the biology, biochemistry, the ecology, the dynamic functioning of the ocean that needs also to simulate all the currents, the temperature, the salinity, the distributions, the nutrients. There are many, many things. And of course, artificial intelligence, and in particular machine learning, are critical for all of that, because for data simulation, we need AI for all of that, right? For pattern recognition, to identify anomalies, the trends, the relationship, we need AI.
Yes.
For predictive analytics, forecasting future ocean conditions, we need AI. For understanding the complexity of all of that and extract insights, we need AI. So there are many, many challenges, but this is a very good challenge, in fact.
Okay, I am sorry, but I receive a message. We are late now, and so I will have to perhaps to close. Is it time to finish? Yes.
Yes, Dr. Gay, you can wrap up if you want with your thoughts.
Okay, so
Thank
you very much to all the speakers, and thank you also for giving us a lot of ideas about the way in which ECLAC will in the future will be very important. And also, I think that for the UNOC 3, it will be very important to have your thought, your result, and also the questions that you are leading. And so thank you again, and I give the floor to the organizers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that panel. We really appreciate your contribution and your commitment to helping us in this panel number 3. Greetings, au revoir. We'll hopefully see you in France at UNOC. Thank you. Ok, entonces en este momento estaríamos en condiciones.
Okay, so now
El panel 3, el 2 y el 1 ya
we
no se-
conclude panel 3. We've already closed panel
No sé si escuchan una traducción que yo no estoy pudiendo.
I don't know if you can hear the interpretation. I can't hear it.
Okay. Entonces, en la sesión de cierre
So,
de
in
estos
the
Blue
closing
Talks, lo que
session of
vamos
these
a
Blue
realizar,
Talks,
entiendo que tenemos ya conectado
I
al señor
understand
Renaud
that we
Collac,
have
a la señora
Renaud
Mariana
Collac,
Murillo, embajadora,
Mariana
y el
Murillo, the
señor Javier
ambassador,
Medina.
and
No
Mr.
sé si me
Javier
pueden
Medina
confirmar si están.
connected. I don't know if you can confirm to me that they
Señor
are connected.
Renaud Collac, primer consejero
Mr.
de la
Renaud
Embajada
Collac
de Francia en Chile.
from the French Embassy in Chile.
Perfecto. Tiene usted la palabra.
Yes,
Muy bien,
you have
muy
the floor, sir.
agradecidos de que nos pueda
Thank you
acompañar y de
for
todo el
accompanying
esfuerzo
us
y el apoyo que
and
hemos
for the
recibido
whole effort
del
and
gobierno de
support that
Francia
we
y en
have
particular
received
de la
from the
Embajada de
government of
Francia en
France and
Chile. Por
especially
favor,
of the
adelante,
French
the floor is
Embassy
yours.
in Chile. You have the floor, sir.
Muchas gracias. Gracias
Thank you very
por
much.
sus debates muy interesantes.
These have all been very interesting
Yo aprendí muchas
debates.
cosas
I learned many
le
things,
agradezco. Lo siento
and
por la ausencia
I
del
thank
embajador.
you.
Estoy encargado
I
de
am sorry for the absence of the ambassador. The ambassador is unfortunately
Entonces
traveling
voy a
abroad.
hacer unas palabras muy generales.
So I'll offer some or share with you some very general comments to say things that I'm sure you know very well.
Como varios de ustedes. Hemos asistido a una secuencia de
We have participated in a sequence of Blue Talks, and I thank ECLAC once again for providing this new scope for dialogue. We had the opportunity of strengthening our cooperation around essential issues for the region and even for the planet. The protection of biodiversity and the commitment with our oceans are essential aspects that require concrete actions, as often repeated by the Executive Secretary of ECLAC and the President of the Forum. We must be bold because we are running out of time in order to save the oceans. The objective right now was to jointly explore the most urgent challenges in order to achieve to advance in this direction, and we now have a good diagnosis together with operational proposals that have been put forward during these three panel discussions. I have two aspects that I would like to highlight: the key role of all stakeholders and collective action at a regional and international level in order to consolidate possibility for success. Everyone united around a common goal, and by everyone I mean different sectors, NGOs, international organizations, and so on. And secondly, the greater knowledge about the oceans, helping us to find solutions, prevention, and the many scientific entities and the role that they play in the dissemination of knowledge, and such as the participative scientific program Científicos de la Basura, which is an example, evidences all this. The 8th Forum for Latin America and the Caribbean and the Blue Talks sequence prepares us for a UNOC 3. And this has been underway since the first COP, and with the same spirit, Costa Rica and France have decided to welcome in Nice the next ocean conference. 10 years after COP21, UNOC 3 will be a unique opportunity to highlight that everyone has to be involved around climatic action, and this will conclude with a day of action for the ocean, comprised of a political declaration and a whole list of voluntary commitments. UNOC 3 will then be the place, the best moment and place to renew our determination to enter into commitments around essential aspects such as high seas, sustainable fishing, the acceleration of the achievement of protecting 30% of protected marine areas by 2030, as well as the struggle against the contamination of plastics and the decarbonization of our ecosystems. And governments and states, together with thousands of participants from the whole world, will be paying close attention to this, and therefore we can say that UNOC will highlight the crucial role of the Latin American nations in the conservation and the sustainable protection of oceans. Latin America is the home of exceptional marine biodiversity, and its commitment is essential for the development of the resilience of coastal and ocean communities, as was mentioned during the panel discussions, and for the development of a sustainable blue economy. This must become fundamental for the governance of oceans, and it must be at the very center of environmental policies, as well as climate and mitigation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Renaud Collard, representing the French Embassy in Chile, for your words and for these very important points that you have highlighted. Now I'd like to offer the floor to Mrs. Adriana Murillo to also share her closing words to us. She is the ambassador of Costa Rica in Chile. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank ECLAC, the Executive Secretary, for taking on board this initiative proposed by the division headed by Martin and his team that have made so many efforts to organize these three very important panel discussions as a contribution to that single voice by Latin America at UNOC 3 that the Executive Secretary referred to during his introduction. I would also, of course, like to thank the French embassy and the regional delegation of French cooperation that have both supported us in order to organize this activity. My greetings to René Colal and my gratitude for Rayen and also to Tatiana and Francoise who have acted as moderators of these panel discussions, and also my gratitude for ECLAC because of the insights into some of the research that they have conducted. And as we have heard, the oceans panorama will be very relevant for our countries in order to have elements and data that can feed into the position of our countries during UNOC 3. As we have said, the ocean as a single and indivisible system is very important for the world, and considering that 71% of our planet is covered with oceans, but for our planet, this is also a very relevant issue, not only from the viewpoint of marine territories, that is greater than land territory, but also from the environmental point of view, considering marine biodiversity that our region has. And also from the viewpoint of the economy, we have discussed here the importance of this when it comes to jobs in our region. Marine ecosystems is a very important job producers, and also coastal cultures are also very important in the identity of our peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. We also discussed some elements that will be presented to us, the ocean panorama mentioned by the Executive Secretary, such as the need of access to financing, the need to strengthen science, and the issue of participation, also highlighted by the presenter, by Zoila, in the first panel. Zoila Bustamante highlighted that. I believe that these elements are in accordance with the priorities that Costa Rica has established for UNOC 3. Given the fact that these are vital elements in order to advance or make headway with this marine agenda, as well as other elements that were mentioned, such as compliance with regulations. We need to make progress with regulations with the signature of the different agreements, but we have also discussed when it comes to fishing the issue of subsidies and the WTO agreement. All that is very important, and also compliance with other regulations that are not necessarily binding, but that in practice, as has been presented by many of the panelists, lead to changes, have an impact, and are relevant for people and for populations out in the field.
Los elementos de este panel nos pueden ayudar a fortalecer o
this panel can help us envisage what are the commitments of each country that each country can present. And as Renaud has said, these commitments as a political statement will become the ocean action policy, we've also discussed about important elements that could be at the basis of the commitments of the countries present. So we like to invite countries in Latin America and the Caribbean to be ambitious with their submittals and presentations during the seminar. I'd like to also underscore some of the elements that have been addressed in each one of the panels, some additional elements, such as the issue of taking part in decision-making processes regarding this matter, the issue of climate change, how it is affecting marine ecosystems by acidification, rise in temperature, and also how blue economy is also an opportunity to work on in new areas, new sectors related to renewables and tourism, for example. I'd like to highlight also in terms of the cooperation panel, the progress that the region has achieved in terms of protected areas. Although, as we heard from the panelists already, there's unequal progress, although some countries have been able to, we've been able to achieve the 30% goal, and I believe there are other countries that in turn must work a little bit more in order to achieve that goal that we set for ourselves as the international community. Also, I think it would be worthwhile to present some other type of cooperation initiatives regarding protection areas, but for example, CEMARC, which is the East Pacific Marine Draft between Ecuador, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Panama, for example. Those are initiatives that need some development, some fostering in order to achieve practical results, as we have mentioned. I'd just like to close my remarks. I'd just like to thank all the attendees for all the inputs they've given us. We have been organizing a series of blue talks between Costa Rica and France and many countries in Latin America. We also organized the ECLAC panel during the Sustainable Development Forum that included several important elements, and now with this regional blue talk. So in each one of our countries, we have elements provided from the field and by the experts, and not only scientific data, but also the people who work in the marine context. They have given us their contributions and their input. And with this regional blue talk, we also have a series of elements in the regional context, a regional perspective that will foster the engagement of countries in the region in Blue Talk number 3. So we hope that voice of Latin America will be a powerful voice, an ambitious one, to contribute to the action plan with very specific and concrete commitments. Thank you all for your engagement. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Murillo of Costa Rica, for your kind remarks and how you value this joint effort that we have conducted and that we are able to show today. Next, I'd like to have the pleasure of leaving you with our Mr. Javier Medina, Deputy Executive Secretary, for some closing remarks. Thank you very much. Deputy Secretary, we're eager to listen to you.
Gracias, Ryan.
Thank you,
Muchos
Ryan.
saludos a todas y a todos.
Congratulations and
En nombre
greetings
del
to
doctor
all
José Manuel
on
Salazar
behalf
Sinac,
of
nuestro
José
secretario
Manuel
ejecutivo
Salazar
estatal.
Sinac,
Al
Executive
concluir
Secretary
esta
of ICLACO.
valiosa
And
jornada
now
de
closing
diálogo,
this
quiero expresar
dialogue
mi
today,
más
I'd like
profundo
to express
agradecimiento
my
a
deep
todos los participantes,
thankfulness to all
panelistas,
participants,
moderadores,
panelists,
moderadoras, por sus destacadas contribuciones,
chairpersons, because
por
of
su
their
compromiso
distinguished
con nuestro
contributions
océano.
and their commitment with our
Este evento,
oceans.
realizado en colaboración con
This
los gobiernos
event
de Costa
is
Rica y
taking
Francia,
place
ha
thanks
sido
to
una
the efforts of
oportunidad
Costa
única
Rica
para
and
fortalecer
France. Has been
nuestra
a
posición
unique opportunity
regional
to strengthen
frente a
our
la
regional
tercera
position
conferencia de las Naciones Unidas
facing
sobre el
the
océano,
third United
UNOC 3,
Nations
que se
Ocean Conference,
celebrará, como ustedes
UNOC
saben, en
3,
Nice en
that will
junio de
take
este año.
place in Nice in June
Durante
this year.
este Blue Talk
During
regional
this
hemos
regional
abordado de
Blue
manera
Talk,
profunda y
we have
constructiva los
delved
retos y las
deeper
oportunidades que enfrenta
on the
nuestra región
challenges and
en la
opportunities
gestión
faced by our
sostenible del
region
océano, los
in
mares y los
the
recursos
ocean's
marinos.
sustainable
Los datos y las propuestas que hemos
development.
compartido
The data and
nos han
proposals that we've
permitido
heard about
visibilizar la
have
importancia
allowed us to
estratégica de
see
América
the
Latina y el
strategic
Caribe
importance of
para
Latin
la
America and the
conservación de la
Caribbean for
biodiversidad
the
y la
preservation of
protección de los
biodiversity and
ecosistemas
protecting
marinos,
the
que
marine
constituyen
ecosystems
una fuente
that
vital de
are
ingresos,
a
empleo y
vital
seguridad
source
alimentaria
of food
para
security,
millones de personas en
employment,
nuestras costas.
and income
El
for millions of
océano
people in
es
our
parte
coastal
fundamental
areas.
de
The
nuestra
ocean
identidad y
is a
nuestro
fundamental
desarrollo.
part of our identity and
Más
our
del
development.
50%
More
del
than
territorio de la región está
50% of the
constituido por
territory in the
océanos.
region is made up
Y
by
como hemos
oceans.
escuchado hoy,
And as
la
we
situación
have
actual
heard today,
demanda
the
una
current
acción
situation demands
estratégica urgente frente a
urgent
las
strategic
múltiples amenazas que
action
enfrentan
when
nuestros
faced with
ecosistemas
multiple
marinos,
threats that our
tales
marine
como la
ecosystems are facing,
sobrepesca, la
such as
contaminación, el cambio climático
overfisheries,
y los
contamination,
riesgos
climate
derivados de la
change, and
minería en
risks
aguas
derived
profundas.
from
Estos
underwater
desafíos
mining.
requieren
These
respuestas
challenges do
institucionales
require
inmediatas, pero
immediate
también
institutional
colaborativas
responses,
y
but also
sostenibles.
they
Este
must be
evento ha sido
collaborative
también
and
un
sustainable.
espacio
This
para
event has been
explorar cómo
also
América
a
Latina y el
space
Caribe
to explore
puede
how Latin America and the
convertirse en
Caribbean
un
can
referente global en
become
gobernanza
a
oceánica
global
transformadora.
benchmark in terms of
La economía
transformative
azul
ocean
sostenible debe ser
governance.
el motor de
Sustainable
nuestro
blue
futuro
economy
marino.
needs to be the driver of
Pero
the
esto solo
future
será
of
posible si
our
trabajamos
oceans,
en
but that will
conjunto,
only be possible
con
if we
una
work
visión
together
de futuro compartida y un
with a
compromiso
shared
firme
vision
hacia la
of the
acción
future
colectiva.
and
Es
collective
crucial que continuemos
action
impulsando
commitment. It is
políticas que
key that we
eliminen los
keep
subsidios perjudiciales para los recursos marinos,
enacting
que
policies that
promovamos la
will
adopción de soluciones
eliminate
innovadoras y que se
deleterious
garantice el
subsidies,
acceso
and that we
significativo al financiamiento
guarantee
necesario
equitable access
para
to
la
necessary
conservación
funding
y la
for
restauración de
conservation
nuestros
and
ecosistemas marinos.
rehabilitation of our marine
A medida que nos
ecosystems.
acercamos al
As
UNOC
we
3,
get close
es
to UNOC
fundamental que
3,
América Latina y el Caribe llegue a esta
it is
cita
key
con
for
una voz
Latin America and the Caribbean
unificada,
to get there with a single voice,
reconociendo su responsabilidad global, pero
recognizing
también
its
exigiendo
global responsibility,
solidaridad
but
y
also
corresponsabilidad por parte de
demanding
la comunidad internacional.
co-responsibility by the
La
international
región, que
community.
alberga
The
algunos de los
region that
ecosistemas más
holds
ricos y
some
diversos del
of the
planeta,
richest and
debe
most
ser
diverse
considerada no solo
ecosystems on the
como una
planet should
víctima
be
de los
considered not
impactos
only
oceánicos,
as a victim of
sino como una
oceanic
líder
impacts,
en la
but as a
formulación de soluciones
leader in the
para la
formulation of
sostenibilidad
solutions
planetaria.
for planetary
Desde la CEPAL
sustainability.
continuaremos
From
trabajando
ICLAC,
con
we
los
will continue
países
to work
para
with
la
the
elaboración
countries
de políticas
in order
públicas
to
basadas
develop
en
public
evidencia
policy
y la
based,
promoción de la
evidence-based public
cooperación
policies
internacional
and the
para asegurar que nuestra
achievement of
región sea
international
escuchada y
cooperation so that our
respaldada
region is
en los
heard
foros
and
globales.
supported
La
in global
publicación del
fora.
panorama del
The
océano, los
publication
mares
of
y los
the
recursos marinos en el
overview
desarrollo
of
sostenible en América
oceans,
Latina y el
seas,
Caribe
and marine
es
resources in
solo
Latin America
un
and the
ejemplo
Caribbean is
de
just one
cómo
example
buscamos generar
of how
conocimiento
we are trying
que
to
impulse
build
acciones
knowledge that
concretas
will drive
para un
concrete
océano
action
limpio,
for a
saludable y
clean,
sostenible.
healthy, and sustainable
Gracias,
ocean.
pues, nuevamente a
Thank you
todas
all
por su
once
presencia,
again
su participación y su
for your
compromiso.
presence, engagement,
Sigamos
and
adelante con
commitment.
determinación,
Let's keep on going,
sabiendo que juntos podemos
knowing
construir
that
un
together
futuro
we
más
can
justo,
build
próspero y
a more
sostenible
fair,
para
prosperous,
nuestros
sustainable
océanos y
future
las
for our
generaciones que
oceans
vendrán.
and the
Que la
generations to
conferencia
come. that the conference today is only the beginning of stronger and more effective actions for Latin America and the Caribbean as key stakeholders in global ocean governance. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor Medina, y a todos
Very
los
much, Mr. Medina,
participantes,
and all of our
embajadora Murillo,
participants.
también señor Renaud,
To Ambassador Murillo, for
Yo creo
Mr.
que
Corral,
solo
and
anunciar
I
al
believe that we
final de
just
que todas las
want to
presentaciones de este
announce
mismo evento en sí
by
que
the
se ha
end of this
grabado va a
meeting
ser
that all
subido y compartido
presentations and the event
para los que
itself
no
that
pudieron
has been recorded
conectarse
will
a
be
esta
shared with
hora y
everybody
más
that has not
preciso,
been able to
más
connect.
adelante va a estar
And
disponible en
later
nuestra
on,
página web y
this
también
will
se
all
lo
be
vamos a
available
socializar
in the
a nuestros
webpage, and
coorganizadores,
we will share
agradeciendo de
it to
nuevo
our
a la cooperación
co-organizers. Again, we would
francesa
like
y
to thank
también
the French
al gobierno
cooperation President and the government of Costa Rica that have been helping us in this tremendous effort. And we are happy with what we have been able to obtain. We would like to say goodbye and close this event until next time. Thank you very much to all.
Gracias.
Can we take a picture?
Y sería bueno, exacto, si los panelistas que están conectados
It
pueden,
would be wonderful if all connected panelists can
sí,
open
sorry,
your cameras.
if you can unhide yourself, perfect, so we can take a picture, please, all of you. Los que están, claro. If you can share your camera again, please, if you're connected, if you are still connected, of course, so we can take a picture very quick, all the panelists. We kindly ask you. ¿Hay alguien tomando la foto con la captura de pantalla?
Personas que tienen la cámara abierta.
Gracias. Perfecto.
Yes, I have already taken the picture to all of you that have your camera connected.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Un gusto verlos.